Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you may see a little link down below. You can come into Zoom and actually be part of the conversation, but it's up to you. If you are here for the first time and you're an attendee and you're looking at all these panelists and you're wondering, how did I end up as an attendee and they ended up as panelists? Well, they showed up early. So you can show up early too. We'd love to have you, especially if you look at what we're talking about and you think, I know more than those people, like about whatever it is. There'll be one question. You'll be like, these guys and these women have no idea what they're talking about. Jump in, have a conversation with us, be part of the conversation. This is a show that is by the entire audience, for the entire audience. And so we'd love to have you here in the panel. We open the doors at 6 o'clock in the morning, bright and early. And I can't really promise anything between 6 and 6:30. It's a wide open conversation. It's what we would kind of think of as the original hour. That's kind of how we started. So we all just kind of sit around and talk, and sometimes it's technical and sometimes it's not. And then from 6:30 to 6:40, somewhere in that range, we'll distribute the Discord link. The Discord link is where almost 700 of us continue to talk about this, because 3 hours is not enough. So that happens in between all of those things. By the time I do this announcement, the Discord link has expired, so you have to come back tomorrow. At 6:40, 6:45, sorry, we'll start the mic checks. Once we've started the mic checks, we've closed the doors for today for the panelists. So you need to be here at be here by 6:40 to make sure that you can be part of the panel. Then at 7 o'clock, we're going to start. This is our beginning, and we have open questions for the first hour. So for the first hour, 7 to 8, we're always going to be open questions. You can ask whatever you like around media production, and we'll discuss it. My recommendation is to ask early and ask often. Now, right now there are 196 people in this group. There are not 196 questions or 196 votes. So all of you need to pick up the pace. That's all I got to say. So you'll ask the questions and we'll sit there and discuss them. You're driving that conversation as an attendee. You're driving the conversation that we have. So we definitely need you to participate and ask the questions that you have. There's also a chat, of course, that you can be part of and continue to talk amongst yourselves. The second hour is generally a vertical that we pay some attention to some specific thing. And so today we're going to be talking about education. We also talk about education over the weekend on Saturday. Saturday, just so you know, if you're an educator, we're going to start at 9 o'clock answering questions about education, and we're going to stop when we stop having questions. So, I mean, there is some outer limit where we all get tired, but we'll take some little breaks. But we know that the coming year is going to be very stressful for educators. So we want to make sure that we're able to answer as many questions as we can. We cleared our Saturdays. We used to have a long day where we did a couple other things. For August, we're clearing our Saturdays so that we can answer media questions for educators. If you have friends that are educators that you think would be interested in that, definitely have them come in. We're not really talking as much about, we're talking a little bit about pedagogy, but primarily about what we would call ball handling skills, good video, how to do presentations, how to work on our audio. How are we going to actually produce the content that's necessary for an online education? So a lot of that, there's a heavy focus on Saturdays. Mondays are wild card. This Monday, we're going to be talking with AWS. We've got some great guys coming in to answer your questions about how AWS works. Tuesday is audio, and we're going to invite all of you to come in. Those of you who are using Audio Hijack and Loopback, we want to have you, we're going to just cross trade notes. A lot of us are using it. Some of us are using it well. Some of us are not using it well. So we're going to talk about what all those bits and pieces and how they work. So that's audio. Wednesdays are camera days or video days. Chris Summers basically pushes that day and decides what we're talking about. And I haven't talked to Chris about next Wednesday, so I can't tell you. Thursdays are our special guests that we bring in to discuss it. I think we had a great conversation yesterday with Shauna Conair. And so we're going to have more of those next week. So that's kind of how the second hour goes. One thing that we're going to ask you to do on this hour is, if you have a question for education, try to start your question with edu. So just do edu : and put it out. That way we can separate it. It has created a process for us that we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that in our question system. But so we're going to work on making that easier. But right now, if you can just type edu : that's going to make Chris Fenwick's job easier, because he'll know which ones to keep for the second hour versus which ones to have in the first hour. So So that's it. And just if you want to share this with other people, let me give you the link here. The link is right there. Oops, I put it in the wrong place again. I think I have the wrong chat open here. So there is the link. You can share that link wherever you'd like. The larger this group gets, the more guests we get. and so as we grow it, hopefully make a difference for folks, but also it allows us to keep on learning faster. We keep on getting great new panelists. We have new panelists every day, and that comes from the group growing. So anyway, and great attendees. All right, let's start with the questions. Go ahead, Chris.
First of all, I just want to say to Doug Johnson, I made a comment a couple of days ago. I go, "Oh, Doug Johnson. I have a very good friend named Doug Johnson," and I thought it was him. He said, "No, that guy's an imposter. I don't know who that guy is."
That would have been me. Yeah.
All right.
No,
all right.
He says you're the imposter. Anyway, Alex, let's get into the black magic stuff. Doug Ferguson wants to know what your thoughts are on the new ATEM streaming bridge, and do you think it'll just work with the black magic gear?
So, yeah, I'd love to know what other people's opinion is. I'll give you my real quick opinion about it. I think that the streaming bridge could be revolutionary. What I'm really curious about is low latency transport over the internet is something a lot of people work pretty hard on, and no one's been very successful at very low latency, transport over the internet. So I'm very curious as to what kind of forward error correction, whether they're using SRT, which they could. SRT would be a solution that could be used by Blackmagic, but what he showed on the video, and to kind of back up for everyone who didn't see the announcement, Blackmagic announced two things yesterday in their seemingly weekly podcast, weekly streams now. One is they took the ATEM Mini and added ISO, so you can now do ISO recordings to a drive, which for a lot of people will be kind of amazing. It doesn't really fix my problems because I wouldn't record an H.264 for ISOs. We record ProRes for what we're doing, but I can see tons of educators, tons of corporate, tons of other people that would love to have that capability. The other one that I think is more important is this bridge. The bridge lets you basically attach a mini to the bridge over the internet, over a LAN or WAN, and then you're getting the output. Basically, the mini is your Mini Pro or Mini Pro or Mini ISO will stream to that bridge and come out as SDI or HDMI out. So the possibility there, if it worked, would be to we would send that mini out to someone. So just to kind of, I have a high profile person I want to bring into my show. I send the mini out. With a camera, let's say a 6K, I can shade that camera now, and I don't quite understand how that would work, but I can get that feedback from that mini without them having to have any Skype or Zoom or anything else. It's a point-to-point connection back to and comes out as SDI, goes in, and so theoretically I could bring a bunch of people in. So I think that's interesting as far as how that goes. You could theoretically have 4 of those little bridges connected to 4 remotes coming in, pushing little HDMIs out to another mini and cutting a show back and forth, and even sending that one back out to another bridge, which is something that Grant talked about. So is it useful if it works well? Absolutely. We would buy 20. Will it work well? We don't know. Again, from someone who's been doing this for a long time, if Grant has figured out some magic sauce that means that I'm going to get no frame loss or very little frame loss, from a hardware box, from a switcher to a hardware box, the only problem we're going to have is that we won't be able to buy them because everybody everywhere will be buying them as fast as they possibly can make them. So that'll be the same problem we've had with Blackmagic, is they're so on the mark of what people need that we can't buy them because they can't make them fast enough. So anyway, Bill, we're going to spend a little time on this one because obviously it was a big announcement. Bill, and then George, and then Stuart. Other folks, keep your hands up. You'll do those 3, and then we'll keep going. Go ahead, Bill.
So to me, this seems like Grant has done a brilliant job of looking downstream, and he sees what's happening, which is the video networkification. It's not a word, but I made it up, of the entire planet real fast. And I can see so many places where this is going to be critical. And I think, I don't want to go into the education hour, but just think about the fact that so many new people in schools are going to be having to manage a lot of individual teachers on video presence. And so tools that make these things easier and that can be controlled from a central position, so that it's not always the teacher having to do anything, or the corporate video producer having to do anything as they're switching a board meeting for their stockholders or things like. I just think this is going to go across the industry, and we're seeing a change and the need for these tools to be rolled out much wider than they always have before.
I will say that I think that Blackmagic is definitely taking a somewhat of a right turn where they are not worried about broadcasters anymore. I mean, they're not trying to persuade broadcasters that Blackmagic is going to replace their grass, or, I mean, the constellation goes that direction. But what they're really seeing is that the meat of the market right now is going to be the education, corporate, individuals, podcasting, all that stuff. And they're really focusing a lot of their attention on that. And it's obviously working for them, because none of us can buy any of their hardware right now because we're competing with everybody else. Go ahead, George.
Morning. So first, the ISO and one of the bridge will cost 1340, and the Pro 940. As far as pricing, if you want to have a package, I pre-ordered 4 of them. I mean, I'm a Blackmagic guy. I know it's kind of sickening, but I think just being on show site this week, and I see the struggles we had with Zoom and SRT, this is going to be a solution that we can use easily. Time will tell if they integrate it with other Blackmagic products. We still don't see what's going to happen between the Mini and the Constellation. So I'm really stoked for what they're doing. There's so much room for this to explode.
I don't think the Constellation will ever be able to do what the Mini does, because I think that what they have is an H.264 encoding chip on the Mini Pro and the ISO, which is what makes that work. So I think that we're gonna. I don't think that, which makes it invisible to the switcher to do that H.264 encode. So I don't think we'll see it, but I do think that I can imagine that we would see every switcher that comes from Blackmagic. If we see the pattern that Blackmagic has, at some point we're going to get all those in-between switchers that are old updated. And when they update it, I can't imagine they're not all going to be able to stream, which is going to be disruptive. Jason?
So I, for one, was thoroughly impressed by the whole presentation. I too pre-ordered.
Except for the audio. Did you notice?
Oh my God, yes. Except for the audio, that really bothered me. But oh well.
So Blackmagic though, it's like, I've got a great product and I'm going to overmodulate the entire show.
Yeah, why did you do that? You didn't have to do that. But yeah, at the end of the day, like he spent 5 seconds on like, oh, and that it'll automatically set up and present. What's going to make this whole, these two products work together and make or break is how robustly it does NAT traversal. Like, how well is it going to manage its traffic through
Right.
any switch?
It is a huge advantage. It's the same advantage that the Link has, that Elemental released, and the Clearcaster has. Owning both sides of the pipe makes a huge difference. And so there are a lot of aggressive things that can be done as far as error correction and all kinds of transport when you own both sides of the puzzle. It's when you're just sending it off to something, it's much harder. It's much easier in some ways to develop that. But because he owns both sides of the hardware, because Blackmagic is taking that. Now, there was some comment that he made that I was like very curious about, that he didn't really, like, I'm waiting to see the software. He said, and then he said the bridge can take over the Mini. And I was like, does that mean I can open a Mini piece of software and run the switcher remotely if it's connected to the bridge? And I
had the same question, and I thought I made it up.
No,
Like,
no,
I
was like, did I hear that correctly? Sorry, Doug, go ahead, and then Victor.
Yeah, I actually thought it was rather interesting that they released just a receiver product and not a transmitter as well. So, I mean, I'd be very...
Well, the Mini is the transmitter, right?
I understand, but like those of us that are doing video professionally would love to have an SDI version of something that we could use, right? So,
yeah,
that's called the web presenter.
But it doesn't work. It doesn't work with a new receiver, though, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool that they've done this, but I would love to see a transmitter as well.
Yeah. Victor, and then Stuart.
So this really answered the question that I was all flippant about last week when I was looking for monitors and ways to do it, which getting ISOs. As a prosumer guy running a one-man shop, being able to take my 3 cameras plus whatever web content I'm presenting and having it all brought back to me as ISOs, even better as a DaVinci project, makes it easier for a one-man guy like me who's totally intermediate. So I'm thrilled about it. Immediately ordered it from Guy, and maybe I'll see it, I don't know, Christmas? Who
Yeah,
knows?
exactly. Stuart and then Beju.
Two things that George and I were actually talking about on Discord last night. If you're sending a crew out to do a news story, you can send a mini with them and stream back to the bridge at the broadcast. That means you're not paying for crazy expensive hardware like a live view or the subscription services for those sorts of things to work with later. So broadcast is going to grab it. I too am surprised there's no version of the bridge that's sending, and I'd expect an ATEM mini mixer later that can actually stream backward and forward, because then you've got streams of what you're sending to the reporter who's standing out in the middle of nowhere reporting a story and coming back to the studio.
Yeah, and like what you want is like a barracks, for video. Barracks does audio streaming, and you just kind of attach them, and then it's really low latency. And you want that. The mini is great to have that, be able to switch and send it. But what you want is I just want to have a box in a box and have them talk to each other like a tear deck does in a lot of ways, but maybe something that actually is easy to set up at Beju.
Yeah, two comments. One is that I really want to know what he's doing for error correction,
Yep.
about how it's going to handle unstable networks, because that's an issue with RTMP we had time and time again. Second is the one nice thing it does, which looks really useful, it lets you add a second output to your ATEM Mini Pro, so you can have the multi-view and a program out if you're not streaming directly off that device. So you can just connect it directly via the cable, which you showed off,
right.
And you can get an SDR or HDMI out of the program with a very low delay directly then locally.
Jeffrey and then Nick.
What they didn't really talk about was if there's security attached to it, because what I can see from this is somebody taking something like a mini and being in one room and then just completely blasting it to everybody else in other rooms on TVs, but also being able to blast it to people at home. So you could have full workforces with a dedicated channel, and all they have to do is turn on that part and therefore see what's going on in their workplace. But once again, that will really depend on security.
That's the stream key, I think, is what they're putting in for that. So you can add stream keys to it, and which then we'll let you tighten that up a little bit. Nick.
Yeah, one of the biggest takeaways for me is that it looks like, they're setting up towards the ATEM Mini, the Mini Pro, as being a hub device. It's, it's growing beyond just itself. And I think particularly since we're working with an education audience right now, I just looked at my vendor, and of course, they're back ordered at the moment, but an ATEM Mini is just over $250 at education pricing. The Pro is like $511. It just, to me, just underscores how getting a boatload of those, and if you have a school system, if you have a university, a college, these things are going to be extensible. There's something that you can grow with, let alone the fact that they're already like half the price of just a comparable switcher that doesn't even have the USB connectivity, let alone the streaming, etc. So that's one of the things that I think that most surprised me, was that they released another device that integrates directly with this mini hub that's like a couple $100.
And what I'm trying to figure out is whether they saw this coming or whether they saw how we were using their product, because there's so many of us that are sending out these Mini Pro or minis and Mini Pros, so that with a little Raspberry Pi or with a Meraki, that we can send out with a camera, we can shade the camera, change focus, everything else for our remote participant. And then we're dealing with Zoom or something else to get them back. And it feels like they read our minds, because now if it actually works, this is the kit that I would build. Like, I would just build this kit. I'd have a whole bunch of these little receivers, and I'd be just pulling back, all the guests through this. The only concern I have is as Beju said, it's the error correction that I'm mostly concerned about. Is what kind of stability are we really going to get, over the internet? Everyone go real fast. We're gonna try to wrap this up in the next minute. So Stuart, then Courtney, then Chris, then Bill.
The other thing we missed was if it's in the same location as the ATEM Mini, it's effectively an SDI out unit for the Mini.
With an H.264 compression in the middle. So we have to remember that's like not perfect. Yeah, Courtney.
One thing I was really confused on, and he said you can stream, you can use the bridge as for digital signage, and it's not clear whether a single mini can do multicast to multiple bridges as individual units, because you pull up on the stream menu on the mini through the software. You pull up which device you want to stream to, but I don't know if it can stream to more than one at a time. That's a big
I felt like it
question.
was only one. I was confused by that too, but I left with, I think it's only one, but it'll be interesting to see. I think you'd need a cloud infrastructure to support multicasting over the internet to multiple devices. Like he would need something in the middle that solved that, and it would increase latency, and it would be more expensive.
And
Chris?
also, it doesn't work with the mini. It only works with the Pro and the Pro
because they have the
ISO,
H.264 encoders.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. Chris?
Yeah, you gave two options. I'd like to think it was the latter one, that they saw how we were using this, because I really don't want to have to buy this thing 3 times.
Yeah, I think that we're just going to keep getting these. Anyway, so go ahead, Bill.
Just for career path advice, if you can be an institutional media specialist in the coming era, you are going to be constantly in demand, whether that's a school district, a corporation, or whatever. You're locked.
Yeah. All right, next question.
Next question, little side thing on Blackmagic. Doug Ferguson wants to know if it's possible to create custom wipes with the Blackmagic constellation.
I don't know. I have to admit that the only transitions I use are cut and dissolve. So I don't like, I use the vertical one and the horizontal one to check cameras against each other. Or sometimes the pyramid to check things, but in production, I don't use any other ones, but I don't know. Go ahead, Jason.
I mean, I'll give you the cheap way to do it. You can always just, do pre-roll with an alpha channel, just load it up into a deck, and there's your custom wipe.
But yeah, I don't know how to. I bet you that's pretty in low level. I don't think that we could add that with. I don't think there's anything in the API to do that. Go ahead.
Can't you?
Go ahead.
Can't you do a lower third, like you did that lower third concept with a PGA with alphas?
Well, Doug, you can.
Sequence?
I think what you're talking about is having it show up as a transition in the the document.
In the TriCaster, you can create in After Effects a transition wipe and add it to your custom wipes. I just didn't know if Blackmagic could do that as well.
I don't think so. But again, I haven't looked very much because again I use dissolve or cut. Like what transitions would you want to build that were
well when we do sports, I use 6 or 7 sports related wipes. So,
okay, got it. Okay, that makes more sense.
Raining cows. I want the raining cows.
Bill, and then
Kiki wipes,
and then Chris.
Generally, in professional video, wipes and transitions that are other than the standard 2 or 3 or 4 are kind of considered the equivalent of typesetting ransom notes when people were learning typesetting and just threw 10 fonts on the stage. That said, in an instructional circumstance, I have used in the past something like every time we push slide left, we are going to see a question. When we come back to the person, push slide right, we're going to see a video example of that. You can build a language through simple transitions like that. And learn to train the audience's expectations of what kind of content is off stage. So there is a place for more than cut and dissolve, but in regular content generally.
Chris,
Fox Sports.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm being asked to do a lot is to have, an animated something or other that's passing through where there's a cut point underneath.
Well, that's sweeper.
What'd you call
stinger? Called a stinger.
Stinger or a sweeper.
Well.
Yeah,
Okay.
so stingers or sweepers. That's super common. Yeah.
What's the best way to do that live?
With a
wipe.
With a stinger. Well, you basically live we have that built in. So basically, in most switchers we have if you're running a stinger transition, you basically are setting up a graphic that has alpha, that's going through with that graphics through, and it's set to where do I change that transition. And so, but that's set in the switcher. So the TriCaster will have that. The the switch. I mean, the larger switchers, not the minis, have that a sweeper transition. So you hit it, you load those graphics. You'll load that sequence in as a frame sequence inside of for Blackmagic, or you just have that file inside of the TriCaster. You load those in. You can even load a sound that goes with them, and it'll go. But as it does that, you're setting up where in that frame sequence, where am I going to do the transition between one frame and.
I guess that's what I maybe I asked the wrong question. That's what I'm building all the time.
Oh, got it. So so I thought you meant like for sweeper transitions or stingers.
A 7-pointed star wipe. I need a 7-pointed star
that's
wipe.
what I was. So I was trying not to go get really rough, Doug, but I was like, why are you doing that? So anyway, transition means something different to me. So so for stingers, absolutely. So you render out those stingers as a now. I would recommend rendering on Blackmagic. I would recommend rendering those out as TGA sequences, which you'll need After Effects for to do properly. The TGA that comes out of Motion has some issues. I mean, you can do it through compressor, but it's a compressed TGA, not an uncompressed TGA, and that's problematic. So anyway, so what you do is you render that out, and then you can load that as a TGA sequence into your Blackmagic. Make sure that it's you got to make sure that it's pre-multiplied when it comes out, not over some other background. So it's got to be a pre-multiplied sweeper with alpha that goes out as a TGA sequence. Once you load that TGA sequence into your Blackmagic switcher, you hit it, and you can even add a sound to it, and it'll go across inside of the Stinger interface. You can decide where in that playout is it going to transition from A to B. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So
sorry,
it's actually a whole.
We talked. Question. No, that's fine. That's fine. We got it answered. All right, next question.
All right. So it's a whole feature called Stinger inside the Blackmagic switchers.
Some people call them, I can't remember whether Blackmagic calls them stingers or sweepers, but I think it's stingers. But we think of them as stingers or sweepers. Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I
they're
just
stingers.
touch on one more aspect of that? vMix has a built-in component called Stinger and image transition or translation. So you take a video file, you convert it into a string of image files, and then those image files are used in the Stinger content to use that transition and phase that video in as image sequence.
How do you convert that into the images?
You just run a utility inside vMix. They give you as an option. It's under the video tools out in the lower right corner. You just have to pull down rather than have it index a movie to an MP4. There are two other options. One is create an image sequence and repair a vMix AVI. So
you used to do that with QuickTime, but thank you.
Next question.
RGP Photog says, please, a lot of interest in this. Please explain the workflow being used to implement the Waves WLM into your live stream. I think we talked about this a little yesterday.
Yeah, we have talked about it in the past. I think somebody needs to make a little video and put it on YouTube, and then we'll say, just go to this link. But Nikki, you want to try to explain it in 15 seconds or 20 seconds since we've covered it?
All right,
just what's the basic?
Yeah, 15 seconds. Zoom audio is running into Pro Tools. Pro Tools has an insert of WLM, so it's reading the levels from there. I'm screen scraping it using OBS and feeding that back into Zoom.
And you could do that. You could do it with anything that takes a VST plugin. So you can, it could be audio hijack. It could be anything that sees that it's going to display it, and then you're just simply cutting it out of whatever. You could use Mimo or OBS or whatever, cut it out and give it back. Next question.
Next question. Hasmuk says, I need a little more screen space for this. Sorry. Test production tomorrow. Cooking some recipes from Conscious Cuisine. Setup. ATEM Mini Pro with 3 HDMI cameras, 2 iPhones, 1 Nikon. MixPre 6 with DPA mic. Zoom meeting or Zoom webinar. Keynote deck. Should I screen share the deck? Alex mentioned Mimo Live, participants in London, Brisbane, probably Brisbane, LA, and SFO.
So what I would say is webinar versus meeting is generally how many people and how you want to interact with them. So if you want to have breakout rooms, you need a meeting. If there's not that many people, webinar is a little weird. I think if it's under 50, I would probably do a meeting, for that rather than a webinar. It depends on whether you want to talk and have them, constantly, have all their videos. Are people ready for video? We have a lot of people here. Obviously the panel here is open to anyone who chooses to join, yet the vast majority of people who come here do not choose to join. So there's a certain number of people that are comfortable in the environment they're in, and webinar allows for that. So that would be my, and then if I'm doing anything interactive, if I'm cutting between things, I would rather use my mini and feed a computer into the Mini as a source for PowerPoint or for Keynote, and I wouldn't use screen capture. I wouldn't use screen scrape unless I had to, because that way you can very interactively just, okay, now, because what's going to happen is, I don't know, for me, I want to go back and forth between my Keynote and what I'm talking about, my video and anything else I want to do. And so having to screen share and then not screen share and then screen share would be really painful to me. So having it just be a button on my Mini that I can hit, let me go back to where we were in the recipe or what we're doing, I think would be a lot more fluid. Any other comments? All right, next question.
Paul Wallace says, Chris Fenwick, as an editor, I'd like yours or anyone else's comments on the Nike commercial, and if you saw Kenny Smith step into the telestrator on the NBA halftime show of the Lakers game.
That's a really, they seem like two different questions.
They're definitely. I didn't watch NBA. I watched a little bit of the NBA bubble to hear the sound effects and stuff. Weird. I've only watched the Nike commercial. I didn't have the opportunity to listen to it. My comment on it is commercials like that, anything like that, the credit is not to the editor. The credit goes to the archivists, the people that are finding the shots that work together. The editor is going to do a lot of speed ramping and positioning, of course, to make those wipes work. Have you seen it, Alex?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I didn't hear it. A producer who I have a ton of respect texted it to me, and she's like, "Oh my God, this is the best thing I've seen all year." So it must be good. I'm sure the audio helps it, but the credit to something like that absolutely goes to the archivists that find all the shots.
And one thing that we were talking about before the show is a curiosity as to whether whether they used any AI to find it. You know, like just search all of these image files and tell us ones that are similar, look like this one, to narrow the search from 1 million hours to 1,000 hours that you had to go through to find it. I'd be very curious as to whether there was some kind of ID, because I know that you can do that with Google, where I have an image, you put it, you give it to it and say, show me other images like that image, and it's quite amazing how good Google can be about finding those, and then knowing everything about my house because I took one picture 6 miles away from it. Sky, real quick.
I'm again, Jeffrey Powers is showing it, and I'd much rather see that than me. But yes, it was outrageously composited, and I'm just curious. They obviously have taken the archive footage and enhanced it and modified that, and I'm sure it was like a Chiat Day or somebody. So the creative on it is pretty awesome, and then the execution, that's almost the easy part.
I bet you that conversation started with, "This is gonna be really easy and cheap."
Oh,
and then it turned out to be nothing.
My
Nothing
favorite
like that.
producer phrase is, "Oh, this will only take a minute."
Yeah, exactly. You're like, we'll just throw this together next week, and then it was like
it's
2
not
months.
Going to be hard. Yeah.
2 months later, and $2 million later, they have a great commercial. It's getting them.
You don't need to call your wife. You'll be home. You'll be home. Honest.
I will say it does speak to the when you can, the reason to do a great ad rather than just an okay ad is how much free publicity they're getting from not having to, they're not paying for all of us talking about it, and it's showing up everywhere. When you do something really amazing, you get a lot of earned views. Mickey and then Bill.
Yeah, I was looking at the credits of the spot, and I saw a good number of VFX and 3D artists in there. So there's probably some changes going on to make the split look smoother, and also
absolutely.
I wouldn't be surprised as well if some of those were actually shot specifically for this spot.
Yeah, Bill?
I don't think so. There's been a lot of chatter in the edit groups about it. And I think this, Nike has been shooting for such a long time at such a high level. They have a bank of material. So I think everybody who's talking about how the producers and the directors who mined that footage to get those specific shots and then iterated, there is a credit roll on one of the sites, and the number of people involved in doing this shows you the power of distributed working on the web collaboratively. Even when you're locked down for COVID or something like that, they probably touched base with all of their individual shops. That agency out of Seattle or Portland, I can't remember which it is,
Chris
did huge work.
Chris and Courtney
a British company.
Oh yeah, Chris and Courtney, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say back to the, oh, this will be easy. Don't bother calling your wife. I actually have a rule in my edit suite, and I will stop people right away. I don't allow the word just because it absolutely it drives me nuts, and it's
I actually don't allow.
super frustrating.
That's
generally
really
don't-
unjust of you, by the way. Just saying.
I actually don't let people say easy, and I also tend to not let them tell clients that everything's going great. Like, like everything is going, everything's nominal is about the best you can do, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Courtney?
Yeah, I've worked on a lot of commercials over the years, and the things people don't realize is something like that spot with a lot of found footage, not really found, is the army of lawyers involved to negotiate the rights to that footage. And if anyone who's ever negotiated rights to NFL films or something for archival footage, it's astounding.
All right, next question.
Okay, next question comes from Tony. Any recommendations for a headset mic combination for use on Windows and Mac, USB preferred, reasonably priced?
Well, the one that we've kind of gone around that I think most of us, Colin found it, and we have been taking advantage of it, is the Pile mic. Someone can put the link in it. The Pile mic with a TechRise converter is what I'm using. And I've bought now 4 of them at this point. And they're $15 each. And they're not, as good as what I'm wearing right now, but they're close enough for most people. And the one I'm wearing is $800 and that one is $15. So, I think the quality per dollar is way higher on the Pile than what than the DPA. So we're recommending them. I tweeted it out. That's the direction that we're going. Does not have an earpiece. I think someone asked me that yesterday.
So links are in the chat. I include an earpiece in my kit, which includes a USB interface, not the one that Alex has, but similar in every respect.
And the only reason I recommend that one is because I bought it and it happened to work, and I just know that it works.
And there are likely others that will work, but we know these
absolutely.
2 work. The one Alex recommends, the one that I have in my list of links that I dropped into chat. The other thing to keep in mind is the IFB that I have included comes in a pack of 2. So if you have 2 kids and you're doing this, that's great. If you have an odd number of people that need these kits, that sucks for you. I've also included a USB extension cable, and that's why it comes to $33 rather than.
Yeah, and you do need the USB extension. Don't extend the audio cable because it's analog. It'll pick up noise on your desk.
Yeah.
Extend the USB. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question.
Okay, Stan Chan says, I need to send my mic output from my MixPre 10 to my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. TA3 input. What's the best way to split my TA3 between my stereo monitors and my Blackmagic? Should I just upgrade to an 833? Should I bypass the mic input into my Blackmagic and focus on timecode sync? If so, what's the best approach to it?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, generally speaking, you don't want to split audio signals with just a Y splitter. That's the purpose of a mixer, is to run the signal into a mixer and then get optimal levels out of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you could just say, should I go to an 833? I would always tell you to go to an 833. Like, if it's like, should I just upgrade? Absolutely, you should always upgrade to an 833. So anyway, but you can tip off. You might want to try. I mean, a Y splitter is not something that you want to use very often, but you could use it in this kind of environment because you're getting your clean. I'm assuming you're getting your clean audio from your MixPre. What's going into the camera is for sync. I mean, that's what I would use it for. So I'm not trying, I would, if I'm just trying to get reference in there, I think I'd be okay with it. If I'm trying to actually have program audio, then I would be less okay with it. Go ahead, Chris, and then Jason.
Stan, my neighbor to the north up in Roseville. Stan, what I would say is it sounds like what you're doing is going into post because you're talking about time code sync. I wouldn't, but just put a simple mic on the camera just for reference. You don't need to bother with all of that. Record your audio in your MixPre 10, save a bunch of money. Don't take the tank to the grocery store, as Alex would push you toward, and just sync this stuff up in your editor.
Yeah, once I have a MixPre, I'm not going to use the audio that's going into the camera. So
Right.
like getting it as reference makes sense. Getting it as you know, to what it recorded, but I'm not gonna, once I have a MixPre and chain, I'm not gonna, the only thing I need in the video is just reference, because I'm going to always bring back that original file. Jason and then Guy.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, almost word for word from Chris. And at the end of the day, if you have MixPre money, don't cheap out on splitting. Like, don't mess with your impedance. Like, that's just a bad idea. You know, either do it or don't do it. It just feels like a complete mismatch of priorities.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, on the MixPre 10, you do have the X1 and X2 auxes that you can drive whatever you want through those channels. So in addition to the XLR that's on the other side, you can route those however you want. So it's just a matter of how you want to route it. So it's easily done. You just got to get the right cabling and just go into the menus and route whatever channels you want to X1 and X2.
And again, I mean, I think that the MixPres are definitely aimed at a specific market, and I'm really happy with that market as far as how that goes. And I think they're really portable and they're very cost effective. You will, if you start wanting to build more complex chains, you're going to want to go to the 800 series. You mean, like, that's just kind of the, you know, the 800 series is going to give you all that extra headroom that you have. If you can afford it, it's going to be a better experience as you keep on growing your kit, where you're going to constantly hit a ceiling with the MixPres in the outputs specifically. Go ahead, Chris.
So when you say go ahead, Chris, it's better that if you say next question, because I don't know which Chris you're talking to.
Fenwick.
If you mean next question.
Fenwick.
All right.
Give me a question, Fenwick.
Perfect. I want to hear, somebody please sample that. I want that ringtone.
Next question, Fenwick. All right.
Perfect. A clean in, clean out. Perfect. Okay. Matt McDougall says, what is an affordable stand or boom arm for a desktop mic to avoid vibrations or desk bumps? Get a bigger desk.
Well, I mean, remember, it's not the arm as much as what you're mounting it to. So you can see the shock mount that Jason has. That is going to let that thing float inside of the arm. So that's what you're really going to use to get rid of this shock mount here is what's going to get rid of your vibration, not the arm itself. The arm is going to keep on doing what it does, which is amplify the vibration through the arm. What the shock mount is what's going to typically diffuse that situation. Go ahead, Bill.
And the cheapest thing, if you're desk mounted, is to just get a neoprene mouse pad and put it under the physical mic between that and the desk. You just want some decoupling so that every ping isn't trans.
I prefer a 3 inches of concrete inside of sand, and then you just set it on top, and it'll. No, just kidding.
Taking the tank to the grocery store again.
Exactly. All right. Next question.
Okay. John Preto says, he just texted me. He goes, hey, my question just disappeared. Here you go, John. John Preto says, any of the developers out there looking at the Microsoft Teams APIs that they just announced, they did say developers would have direct access to audio and video frames. I think this is a really exciting announcement. Super interesting.
Yeah, go ahead,
but
Jason.
What do I know?
I might add that Steve Jobs, when he announced iMessage, said it would be an open protocol, and that hasn't happened. So, I mean, I don't know.
I have to admit that the problem for me is that Teams is a little bit more closed, and we just don't have a lot of people. I use almost every platform, and I just almost never see Teams. And so I see Teams every once in a while, but it's really rare for me to see it pop up. So I just don't think about it as much. And the second thing is, and I use a lot of platforms, I mean, which I've complained about often. And so, but I don't complain about Teams that much because I just don't use it that much.
I spent all of June on Teams because I was working for Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the second thing is that, and I don't think this is probably not going to affect everyone, but for me, I'm so bitter about Skype. I don't want to hear anything about Microsoft again. Like I have literally written off Microsoft for video because I'm so angry with Skype constantly changing and I get that it's two different teams and two different platforms, and they're probably ruining Skype so that we'll use Teams. I get it, but I'm like, the heck with these guys. Like, and I just won't, internally we're just like, yeah, we're not going to ever use that ever. So, I don't want to have it because Microsoft, between the auto updates and everything else. I just don't feel like it's a production platform. I just feel like it's just junk. Anyway, so because I'm just constantly it's this constantly moving target that has no accountability to the actual user of actually caring about building a product that actually works all the time. Anyway, that's we stuck with Skype for a long time, and I think that the barbs just kept on sinking in because we just couldn't find something better, and now I'm just very bitter. Colin, then Nick, and then Sky.
So yes, it's interesting. It is significantly more open than Zoom's API. To Jason's point, it is not quite standards compliant in the usual Microsoft way of being almost, but not quite standards compliant. The documentation is a little bit weird to the extent that they say you must be running a Microsoft Windows IIS server in order to capture and process these audio and video frames, and they give you a frame rate and so on that you can grab things at. Their target use case is for real-time translation and captioning and that kind of thing. It looks very cool, and for those of us who have dealt with the Zoom development team, Microsoft is going to eat their lunch unless they get their act together and start opening up their API a little bit.
Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna. My overall history with watching Microsoft is they just move so slow, and this will be very much of a. I'll believe it when I see it really, put to use where the rubber meets the road. I mean, right now we're able to do so much with so many other platforms. I just still feel Microsoft is on a catch-up mode, and if this actually works, then maybe. But
I would agree with that sentiment. Absolutely. The one thing that's interesting, though, is Microsoft built out their team's development team from 200 to 2,000 developers in the last month and a half. So we'll see.
And that's what I'm going to speak into, because that's Colin's quoting me after working on the all hands for the teams group, and having worked in and out as a freelancer of that facility for over 20 years, to see the cultural shift from I'm happy to have a job and a 401k that's going to take me to retirement to the next, and actually almost the third generation of engineers and coders and just daily worker bees, that the new CEO has really changed the culture there. And so they're excited about making a product as a service company rather than how much money can we suck out of you. So I go back to your top of the hour, the culture that Grant is doing to meet the need. I think I'm starting to see that at Microsoft. Now, is it a big, giant bureaucracy? It's a big, giant bureaucracy. That ship is going to take a while to turn.
I worked in a lot of big, giant bureaucracies, and people scaling up from 200 to 2,000 I've seen before in other products.
Sure.
And it did not improve the trajectory.
I'd be more concerned if they were scaling down, though.
Don't
absolutely.
disagree. I'm just saying from the ground up, it may have some hope. Who knows?
Yep, absolutely. All right, next question.
Dennis Lovelace says, isn't that a very famous race car driver? Anyway, any good solutions to record NDI stream of a vMix call in one file? I know you can route the call through an output and then record, but I'm already using those.
Leland?
Yeah, kind of. You could go over to the NDI. Let me get the tool for you here so I can remember the name of it. It comes with the NDI toolkit. It's basically called NDI Studio Monitor. And what that does is it brings up a video window of whatever's going through your system. You can pick which NDI source is going through it from the computer. And it has a record button down there in the little lower corner. So I can kind of show it to you real quick if I can have the screen share so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so let me get back in here.
Got it.
Got it. Thank you, sir. You're going to see Mickey for the first part of that or not. I'm actually in the window. What you see right now is the NDI. You can see it off to the upper corner. It says the NDI Spitfire vMix output 1. So basically what I've done inside this monitor, which is one of the NDI tools, is come over and selected where I'm getting my source from. And then right down here in the bottom corner, If you click that little button, you can record whatever feed is coming into the NDI source, and then that'll show up. I'm not actually sure where. I think it's just under your videos directory in the standard Windows structure, and we could find out, I guess, when we stop this. But I haven't gone looking for the video because I don't normally record these. I just found this like a week ago. So
there's a settings in there that does that.
Oh, there is up under the top. You're right. You're right. So you can locate here where your video is going to go. And you can also change these aspect ratios as well and control the overlays that might come in. You can create little picture-in-picture windows in here if you'd like to with additional sources. And you can also control your PTZ cameras if you're using them. So good luck with it. See what you get.
Next question.
Timothy McKean says, I dig this question. I got $100 for my birthday. Happy birthday. What should I get for my work from home setup? I have plenty of mics. What's the next priority?
Well, I guess we want to know what your whole pipeline is. It's hard for us to tell you, but go ahead, Jason.
I mean, first and foremost, I would say light. I will take a bad webcam that's well lit over basically anything. You can absolutely get a good light for $100.
What good light for $100?
The what's it called? Camera. Now I'm blanking.
The challenge has been thrown. The challenge has been
I'll have it
lost.
by the end. Just go around. Go ahead. I'll find it.
So if you are looking for a light, one of the things I would think about under $100 is a China ball with a big CFL. The color accuracy on the CFLs may not be perfect, but you can usually correct for that. And but you can get some pretty powerful CFLs. The China ball will cost you $5. Buy 6 of them because they rip. So anyway, so you can buy like little packs of 3. Make sure that it will fit inside of it. But you can get these giant CFLs that are like the equivalent of 150 watt or whatever, and you put them inside of these, and you get a couple of those, and you'll end up. That's probably the cheapest way to soft light somebody that I've ever used. It'll light up the whole room, so you have to be kind of careful with it, but it's a relatively inexpensive way to do it. And the Final Cut user groups was a giant. It's like a 2.5 foot or 3 foot China ball with 6 CFLs that were, or I think it was 6 of these really big CFLs in the center of it. And it lit us all up nice and soft. And then we ended up getting Air Stars, which was a lot more expensive. But that's how it started, was a bunch of CFLs inside of a China ball. Go
I
ahead.
believe Paul had a $17 LED panel with color, temperature control and so on. That was pretty good.
If someone was going to say, do you want a smaller panel or a China ball, I would take probably a China ball every day. Like it's going to be bigger and softer. Garrick, and then Jeffrey, and then Jason. 15 seconds. We're running out of time.
I really like the ICANN PL103, which is a 10-inch light panel that I'm using right now. I've been buying 2 at a time for people at their desks that have been working great.
How much are those?
$100.
Oh,
just about ish.
Okay. Very good. Jeffrey?
I agree on the lights, but I use newer. This is a camera light that I use, the 160, but they have a ton of options. The other thing is, if you've got a light already, go for some soundproofing material.
Yep, absolutely. Jason?
All right, as promised, I found it. It's also from Newer. It's the 2-pack dimmable bicolor 480 LED panel, and it's not perfectly color balanced, but
what's the size?
You get 2 dials.
What's the size of the source?
A square foot, and it ranges from 3,200 to 5,600 K.
Interesting. Okay, absolutely.
A pack of 2 for under $100.
Yeah, buddy. Oh, did I just get a Colin?
You might have, yeah.
Mickey, and then Paul, and then we'll move on.
Link.
Yeah. Who's the one who asked the question? Timothy. I didn't really mention what he does. Like, I don't know if he's in media or what, but I would suggest, like, if you don't have like a comfortable ergonomic keyboard or like a nice comfortable mouse, or even like maybe spend it on a Visa arm for your monitor, so you could get it at a nice comfortable height, and take care of your posture.
Go ahead, Paul. Real
Mickey
quick.
for the win.
IO clean, it's called. That's what it's called. You can see.
And my biggest thing is that I just always want sources to be larger. That's all. It's just that's the heart. Yeah, the bigger the source, the better. Anyway.
IO clean. There you go.
Perfect. Thanks. Colin, real quick.
The other category that we didn't consider was monitor isolation. If you don't have a good headset, find one.
Yeah.
I don't know if having microphones means you have a headset, but it's something to think about.
good earpiece.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
I would also say just join us one morning and let us see what you have in the beginning of the day. Stuart Fairweather says Blackmagic design thoughts on the bridge unit. I know this is kind of coming back, but it's a little different. Will Blackmagic release a version that sends instead of receives? We kind of cover that. Or will they make a fourth version of the ATEM Mini that streams back and forth to ATEM Minis? Who knows?
What I will say is I don't know that an ATEM Mini couldn't talk to another ATEM Mini. Like, I'm not sure that that's not possible. It's the encode. What I think is required is that encoding chip. Maybe it needs a decode chip to it. So that'd be interesting to me to know. But yeah, they can just keep on making $100 more. Let's see how far we can go until we get to 10,000. So anyway, Jason.
I mean,
By the way, this is the last question for before education.
Okay, great.
Every time I've done an interview with anyone at Blackmagic at a trade show, they always start with, we are the a la carte company. So it's not really about stacking things on top of each other. I feel like they backfill features, but really it is all about exactly what you want, you know, and if you want that, you add this. And if you want this, you add that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? No, everyone knows. I think we're all just now waiting for it to show up. waiting for it to us to test it. Go ahead, Chris.
I thought it was interesting when we were talking about the bridge, and I'm only just vamping because we're a little ahead. But when I watched the announcement, to me, the bridge seemed like something to just send. I didn't see it as a production tool. So you're thinking of using it as a receiver for people sending, you know, to bypass like the vMix call stuff that you're doing.
Well, I think Grant thinks that too, because I mean, he talked about the fact that, you won't see the Zoom logo or the Skype logo or all those other logos. So he's definitely, I mean, they're definitely building it for it. And it is all of our high-end kits are specifically mini, they're mini, we use minis, but they could be mini pros because we're going into a computer to act as a webcam. But with a mini pro and this receiver, I could see all of our high-end kits moving to this if it worked. You know, like we would buy 20 of these, put them in a box with all, you know, here's a bunch of lights, here's a bunch of, you know, here's your, because the big thing with the 6K, and the thing, again, the other part that we couldn't quite understand is when he mentioned as an aside that you could take over the Mini, because he has that communication. There's no reason why you couldn't open the Mini software from your host computer and then run the Mini remotely. Because that interface would be amazing, because that's the problem we have right now is we have to have a Raspberry Pi call back, or we have to use a Meraki, or we have to do something where we get it into the network so that we can then control that Mini. And so if again, it was kind of a side comment, so we just don't know what he meant by that. But if he means that we could take over the Mini, that means we can control focus, we can control theoretically zoom, we can control color, everything on that camera can be run from us. All they have to do is set it up and frame it, and we're good to go. Jeffrey, and then Bill, and then Mickey.
It'd be interesting to see them have, you know, like, especially since we're getting into education, it'd be really nice or interesting to see if they have something where it's an actual role for somebody in a school. So all the kids are in their rooms specifically, and then you have the teachers that are in their area specifically. They're running on a Mini or something like that, switching between cameras, and then there's a main operator sitting in a room that's collecting all this stuff through these stream bridges and creating their own Mini so they can go from math to history to economics or whatever, and go back and forth and just make a real interesting connection between all of them. And the one thing about the stream bridge I'm not 100% sure is, can you actually change IPs? So can you all of a sudden switch it from this Mini to this Mini?
I think you can. I don't think it'd be seamless, but I think that you definitely could change it. But I think that, again, to your point, and as we kind of just use this as a seamless transition into our education hour, I think that when you're thinking about education and you're thinking about maybe a smaller version of this panel that might be, let's say, 4 or 5 people, you could theoretically now have a Mini. I could imagine doing roundtables, like taking the Final Cut user group is a good example, which we may try to test sometime if everybody ends up with Minis, where, you know, Fenwick and Steve Martin and Mark Spencer all have this set up at home where they can switch back and forth to their computer or them. They're then feeding those back to me over, and I'm pushing those into another mini or switcher or whatever, and I can switch my own stuff as well. Now we have this incredible interactive conversation going on where they're able to switch in locally and then pass stuff back to us. And Doug would be able to do it definitely because he already has it all set up. So we'll call you, Doug, on that one. But anyway, but the idea though is that you can imagine us having a really interesting interactive. You're connecting switchers to switchers and nesting those together. And again, it may not be something that every teacher has, but you could have lead instructors or lead teachers or folks that are kind of a larger piece of that be part of that conversation. Doug, you were going to say something?
It's like Blackmagic, a lot of their hardware, it's not purpose made. It's like FPGAs. So if we want to have a receiver inside the ATEM Mini, we just really need to let them know that that's something that's important, and they can probably do that just by updating an FPGA.
I think so, but I think that the challenge there is that I think that the distinction between the Mini and the Mini Pro is an H.264 encode chip that is dedicated to encoding. It's not using the FPGA to do the encode. It's a dedicated piece of hardware that a lot of things have. But I think that added chip, and it may be required from a horsepower perspective to have a decoder as well. So I think that I don't know until we tear these things apart. We do some kind of tear down of these boxes, whether those chips exist. But I think that the challenge will be, is I'm going to guess that the receiver has a H.264 decoder in it that puts it all into a chip and doesn't have the rest of I don't think the FPGA is doing that work.
It's entirely possible, but at the same time, Blackmagic has added MPEG-4 encoders and decoders in FPGAs in the past. So
Right.
I think it's entirely possible they could do that.
Yeah. Stuart and then Bill, and then we'll keep going.
One of the Mini's appeals is how easy it is to use. Do we need an audio solution that's just as easy for a teacher to have on a desk and switch the audio just as effectively as we do in the Mini?
Yes, but we don't have it. Yeah, absolutely, Bill. And I wouldn't, if Blackmagic came out with an audio device, I'd probably want to see other people in the front row for that one. It's not something I would jump right on. So far, even though they bought Fairlight, I don't think they completely understand audio yet, given the fact that they just did a live stream that was overmodulated the entire time. Bill?
The whole time.
The whole time.
These things are true, but at least they put audio follows video in the Mini, so at least they understand that as the teacher and the students or whatever move, the audio could move with them. I'm thinking more along the lines of everything that I see this incredibly quick iteration cycle that Blackmagic is doing. I'm almost thinking that they're moving toward hardware as a service, the same way that everybody moved towards software as a service. You're buying these boxes, and if it has the right chips, it just keeps iterating in the box.
Well, we're getting to a point where, because you may say, well, why would you do it in hardware? Well, part of it is because it costs less. It costs less to buy these little boxes than it costs to buy a machine and put OBS on it. You still have to have a machine running OBS. So this is a powerful enough machine, and so it's actually cheaper to use a bunch of these tools than it is to use software. All right, let's go to our education questions. We are now officially, we was kind of halfway between on that last question. We're now officially shifting to education. A reminder for people who are watching this, if you're just getting here, let's make sure to post that office hours. We're using a different Q&A system than the original Zoom one. And so make sure to jump into Mukana for us. And Nikki, you were going to say something?
Yeah. Are we allowing people who want to join in for the education talk to come in?
Yep.
Okay.
Ooh, and the hands go up.
So in the next, and we'll start doing this 5 minutes before the thing. We kind of ran long here, but if you are in education and you'd like to jump into this conversation, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand, and we will bring you in and do a real quick mic check to make sure everything's okay. So go ahead and turn your video on when you're ready, and we'll do a quick check. Hi, Chris. Oh, can't hear you, Chris.
Hello, Alex.
Hey.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Happy to be here. That's good. You can see me. You can hear me.
Yep, absolutely.
Been listening in to the last half hour of re-education. The warm-up.
Very good. We got a couple more here. Let's see here. Go ahead and Greg, go ahead and let us hear and see you.
Sure. Testing 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Where are the meters? Okay. Countdown 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How's
Pretty
that?
close. Could be a little hotter, and you got a little plosives going on there, a little, just a touch.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Try
Chuck.
that. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Alex. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Check, check.
Yep, sounds good. Sounds good.
Good morning, Chuck.
Hey,
How you
Seth.
doing?
We can't
Hi,
see you
Chuck.
very
Good
well.
to see you.
There you go, Seth. Hi there. Oh, can't hear you. It's coming.
You can hear me now.
We can. Go ahead and talk a little bit more.
Morning to everybody.
Yeah, a little roomy, but it sounds good. All right, let's go ahead and shift gears. What do we got? Fenwick?
Emily says, Emily Russo says, what is the best way for a teacher to record a split screen lesson so they are looking at one camera and the other camera is focused on their work area? I've seen some that look like as though they were done in one recording live. Looks natural and important for teacher-student connections.
And are you, Emily, are you streaming that or are you just recording it? Or what are you what are you looking at there?
We're looking to do it as a recording, and we had some teacher in one of the Columbia School, the teaching, do it, and now I can't find the video again. But the way that she did it was like, it looked like iMovie split screen, which I know how to do, but it looked like in real time she's talking to the camera and she had the workspace under another camera and she was writing, and it was synced up perfectly. So it wasn't like she recorded the writing and then recorded talking to the video. And we're just looking for an easy way to do that for our, like, especially the younger kids and our ENL students who need to see the face really well while they're learning the work.
Absolutely. Chris and then Colin.
Considering you already know how to do it in iMovie, just get two cameras that record, clap a couple of times right as you begin where both can hear it, sync it up in iMovie and do it. Or I'm sure somebody else is going to say, learn a little OBS and set up your split screen there and just hit record in OBS.
Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
Yes, to Chris's second point, OBS. It'll work on Windows and Mac. It's free, so very low cost solution. The key thing is to get the proper focal length or proper height for your down facing camera, because these things have fixed focal lengths, like a C920, for example. But yes, then you set up the shot in OBS and you can record. You're not required to stream live out of OBS. You can just record the content locally and save yourself a lot of editing, which I'm sure is to Chris's great chagrin.
And the thing is that with something like OBS, you should be able to do also even multiple cameras. I mean, you could have a couple web cameras going in there. You could split the screen in a couple different ways. There's a couple, and you could even switch between them. So you could have split of you talking, and have this other camera can be a couple different cameras.
You could hook it up with Stream Deck, and you could sit there and do just your face shot and talk a little bit, and then say, "Look at the chalkboard," and click a thing on Stream Deck and show them the what you're writing on.
Right.
It's equivalent to the overhead what the overhead projectors they used to use in the 80s and 90s, where they would sit there with a dry erase marker and write on the whatever the material was.
Document camera.
Emily,
yes,
go ahead.
More or less.
Just to clarify, like, I can do this. Like, I have like OBS. I know how to do that. What I'm looking for is the easiest way to do it for a teacher at home who like really struggles. So most of them are using like an iPhone and their laptop, and they want to be able to quickly, easily do it. So I didn't know if there was something that just makes it.
The easiest way is one of us needs to make a video on how to do this.
Exactly.
And you're right. You would just mount your iPhone and something and use NDI. That would work perfectly well. Use your webcam for your face shot and iPhone down.
I think that what we need in the education, in our education section in Discord, I think we're going to need to have something of tips and tricks that need to be made, or requested tips and tricks. So when we come up with something like that and we say someone needs to make the video, we need to put it up there so that we remember it, because I'll forget that we said that, and then just try to do little 1 minute pieces on how to do something that at least gets people started. So let's think about that. I'll put that section in today. Someone remind me in RFI or whatever if I don't. But we'll put up a section that says requested tips and tricks. and then inside the education section, so that if teachers are asking those questions on how to do something like that, that we figure out some way to codify that later. Go ahead, John, and then Jason.
Yeah, if you want to have a teacher do this without needing anything special, Zoom records to the cloud, and you can decide whether you're going to see a picture-in-picture, whether you're going to have a person presenting large or small, and you can switch those. If you want a hardware device to do it, there's a thing called HoverCam. It's a copy stand. It has Zoom built into it with the picture-in-picture and much more annotation. So, you know, somebody who has no technical skills, the HoverCam is amazing. We've used that with some biology teachers. But the Zoom one, the recording layouts is what it is, and you get that sort of built in, and it's recorded, and then you get a transcript with it, and we have people have used that to add transcript and notes, and it doesn't require any learning how to edit in a video editing system or vMix or all those other things.
Jason?
I know budget is always supposed to be, you know, part of education, but you stress the easiest possible way to do this. The easiest way that I can think to do it is a $300 solution from Decimator called the Demon 4 Quad, and it's incredibly well. It's very easy to kind of set every screen how you want it.
I still think that, I mean, right now I'm leaning towards the us building a video on OBS, because I think that when I think through this, I think of, you have a webcam on your computer. I mean, a teacher is not going to be able to do this fall without one. So you have a webcam, and then you have a phone. And what we need to figure out is the different ways that the phone can be the overhead, and without any wires. And I would say using something like HX Cam or Epoch camera, it's going to link to OBS. You're going to do a split screen, because that we're going to assume that all teachers have a phone, either Android or iPhone, and they all have a webcam. And so I think that the simplest, like, I already have everything I need, is I download OBS and I figure out how to do that. And that would be the theoretically no cost solution. But what's missing is the wetware part of that, which is teaching people easily how to do that. Yeah. And figuring out how to mount it is another piece of that. But I think that just getting the camera, the phone connected to the computer and in a split screen, I think could be done without any extra cost. And I think it's a good little lab for us to think about. Phil, and then Chris.
I just want to let you know, I put a tips and tricks section in education.
Awesome.
So it's there.
Perfect. Thank you. Chris?
For the OBS people, is there a way that you can build a template project that is shareable, or is it
Absolutely.
so custom? Yes.
Maybe we build that.
Yep.
Maybe we build that.
Yeah, absolutely. Guy?
Yeah, there's a little product when I was researching called Flint D4P, and I actually bought one of these and was pretty impressed for 188 bucks. That it takes in 2 inputs, and then it has this remote control right here, and you can do picture to picture with that remote. So it's meant for gamers, but for this purpose that we're talking about, it would work amazing for 188 bucks. I mean, you would record into the computer, but basically it's just this little remote right here that allows you to pick. You see how it says PIP, and then there's like a side-by-side view. So you can actually pick with the remote control in real time. So if you want to go full screen, you hit that HD1, HD2 brings it source 2 to full screen, and then you can do side-by-side or picture-in-a-picture top left. But I was amazed for 188 bucks. I mean, it's a heck of a value. So
what kind of inputs does it use?
It's HDMI.
Chris, okay, and we'll speed up here so we can get to the next question. Chris Fritchie, and then Stuart.
Yeah, I like where you're going with this about creating solutions for this instead of just telling people, hey, go check this out and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Who is going to do these, and at what time frame will they be done?
I have to admit that probably tomorrow afternoon I'm going to at least experiment with it, and if I come up with something really quick, I'll put something up. But if other people want to jump on it, I'm curious about it now, so I have to I'm going to feel like I need to do something. I can't do it today, but I think that anybody else, I will drop the gauntlet that it would be great to see something by Sunday of anybody who wants to try to throw something together.
Well, I for one will be doing a cheap audio kit assembly video first, but if I get really motivated this afternoon, I might do this.
I just want to add a John Iddleston filter, because we keep being the hammer is the only solution we have because we're hammers and everything's a nail. Because John came from the teaching user end and said, it's cheap, it's free, and I have access to it. And so,
well, that's why we're saying, that's why the one that I'm talking about that I want to solve is just how do I use a phone with OBS with the computer that I have? Like,
Amen.
I think that's what we want to try to do first is, and then we can say, in a series of things that I'm slowly putting notes out and outlines for that I'm going to put out is basically 3 versions of everything. Here is the little version that is, doesn't cost you almost anything. Here's something that costs you $100 or $200. And here's what I would use, because I care about time and I wanted to have like a ton of control and I want to, have a remote control arm and, that kind of thing. So the,
Toyota and Lexus. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but we do have to find a way that people can just solve these problems right now, like next week, not how can they figure out how to come up with $188. I mean, these are teachers and they're not made of money and they don't have, and so they're not, and I do think that when we figure out that $100, $200 version, when we think about these big stimulus bills, it'd be great to put a stimulus bill in that got teachers what they need to do online training. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Anyway, Stuart.
But OBS is a nonstop starter for my faculty to get them to load another one. In fact, our IT people probably wouldn't put it in the load set. So that's the challenge we're going to have, at least on some of the campuses here.
Right. Yeah.
Should be pointed out that you could accomplish this with virtually any software switcher in the same way.
Yeah, go ahead, Stuart, real quick.
RTSP camera on Android store will get you your feed from a camera into vMix or OBS. I think there's an Apple version. And if I recall rightly, Sierra TV are doing a NDI camera for Apple phones.
Next question.
The next question comes from Tony Adamopoulos. Setting pedagogy issues aside, key in this question, if you were an instructor who had to capture live in-class lectures for sharing with students who could not attend the class meetings, what components, not specific products, would you recommend? For example, a mic, phone, camera, webcam, etc.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of how to say this without pedagogy. I think all I'd say is that
All of the above.
Well, yeah, I mean, audio is the most important thing. People are going to actually hear you. So that's always I'm just going to keep on saying it. Audio is important. Audio is important. Audio is important. Get a pile mic, get it, whatever you're going to get, but sound intelligible. I think that I hated lectures when I was 6. I hated them when I was 12. I hated them when I was 20. And I still hate them. So they move too slowly. They're too slow. And so like lectures are a horrible idea. They've been a horrible idea for about 1,000 years. So that's all. I'm just going to keep saying it. You should flip the classroom. You should use a keynote. If you're going to do a lecture, cut it down, put a little effort, like you can record it over that keynote. Think about animations, things that are going to pop up as you're talking. You sitting there talking about it is really boring for the students. And half of ADD that they're getting drugs for is because the teachers are moving too slowly for what they're used to. They're watching iPad, they're watching YouTube. You need to speed it up, and so if you're not doing that, you're going to have trouble keeping their attention, and so you need to figure that out and then flip that classroom. And now you can have conversations with the students. You just don't want to waste their time. I'm a father of an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old. I sit, just in case you're wondering if you're in Novato, I often sit over their shoulder out of the camera watching what you're doing. That's all I have to say. so anyway, like it hurts and I cry inside, like watching what my kids are being subjected to. So you need to figure out what you need to do is, flip it, figure out how to use these tools. This is why we're doing this. And then have conversations with the students about what they don't understand. It's what we're doing here.
Define flip. What do you mean?
Anything you're not asking for interactivity with the students, put that in video. Have them see it before they get to the class. Have them watch, like, here's what you want to watch before you get to the class. Then have conversations about what they saw. Don't introduce content in real time because you can't introduce it as fast as you can record it. Like you can take a 45-minute lecture and condense it down into a 15 or 20-minute thing. And then unless you make changes, you don't have to every year. You could just hit play, So the thing is, and then you have conversations with, and again, when we get teachers doing this, the only thing I'll say is that when we get teachers doing this and showing it to each other, they're no longer in this thing where there's 40,000 people trying to, recreate the wheel. When they start seeing each other's lectures, or possibly even using each other's lectures, they can start to accelerate how fast we evolve as in education. But the fact that we're saying it all in an analog world once, it's hard. I admit I can barely watch lynda.com, I can barely, that's barely fast enough for me and I have to do it in small increments or I fall asleep. Bill, Jason, and then Chris.
So I just want to address one little piece of this, because he said specifically type of mic. And this is a physics issue. And no matter what mic you use, the distance between the person talking's mouth and the microphone element is the single largest determinant of clarity of that signal coming through. So if you can use a headset mic that puts the mic right at the corner of your mouth, it will be better than if you use a lavalier that's 10 inches down on your chest. And that will be better than using the webcam microphone, which is 14 inches away from your mouth. And that will be vastly better than a microphone out in a classroom or something like that that's 5 or 6 feet. So in all cases, that physics rules for audio, the most important circumstance of clarity of instruction.
And I'm going to post as I build it out. My kids' setup is going to be a pile mic with a converter with an earpiece and a light, so that, because they have to sit next to each other, and I have to make sure that they can actually hear and see, and people can hear and see them. But I would recommend that kit. I'm not going crazy with it. I'm trying to keep it in a reasonable cost, but I recommend teachers really think about it, because so far the teachers that I've seen haven't. And I think that the headset mic is the thing, and the pile is $30, and it's worth every penny to be heard. Jason, and then Chris, Chris Fritchie, and then Fenwick. Go ahead, Jason.
Building on what Alex said, because Bill answered the question so beautifully, as someone who is highly ADD and didn't finish his degrees until the age of 27, I can say production is a massive pain in the butt until you do it well. And then it's a superpower, because as he said, you can just press play. That's why the work is worth it.
Go ahead, Chris Fritchie.
Yeah, so I just wanted to build on what you were saying, not from a technical standpoint, but from the teaching standpoint. So we have 4 girls, all very much, but the 17-year-old, the one who's in a private school, and she had the rear end of the school year last year, which they had to do the online stuff. What we found out about her is, if you ask her a question, she does not respond. Like it takes time for her to answer something, to think about it. So if a teacher asks a question with a room full of students right there, I wonder how much interaction they even get from the beginning. I don't know if it's just this generation or not, but yes, if it's something they don't have to interact with and you record it ahead of time and they can watch it, think about it, process it, then it becomes a discussion time. That's perfect. I think that's the way that should happen, because if the other children are like our daughter, she cannot respond like that, where I can. I'm a product of the 80s. You had to answer right now, decide now, pencil it in, don't change it. But the kids nowadays just don't do that.
Great. Fenwick.
I'm interested, Alex. I know how passionate you are about education. It's clear listening to you. And it's also clear seeing the frustration that you have with your kids' education. I'm surprised you don't homeschool your kids.
My older kids were homeschooled. It's a hard thing once they get to a certain age. So it's easy when they're kids. Once they hit about 6th grade, it becomes much more, there's just a lot more to cover. There's a lot more content to cover. And that was a real challenge I didn't, they weren't living with me. So for their mother though, it was a very challenging thing for them to keep up with, calculus when she's an English lit major, that kind of thing. So I think that I do think homeschooling with more backup would make sense. I'm not I think that, but I'm more interested right now in figuring out how we move the current schools into something that they can succeed in. I do think that we may see I will say that if public education doesn't figure this out, we're going to see an explosion of homeschooling. And I mean, I know of companies that are looking at this as a business model, and if public systems don't figure this out and COVID lasts more than 18 months, it's probably the end of the public education system. The teachers the number of people that are going to pull their kids into charter schools and into homeschooling and into private, their parents will only put up with this for so long, and it probably will, so it's important and I think public education is important. My kids go to public school. I think that it is, I think it's important for them to have those challenges and so on and so forth. And I didn't always think that. But I will say that public school has a time frame that they need to figure this out. And they totally fumbled the kickoff. And then they fumbled the summer, they're fumbling and fumbling and fumbling, and parents, it's all they care about. I live where I live because it has good school systems. I mean, this is and so the patience of this, anything about any fighting, charter schools and private education and everything else and homeschooling is all going to go away from a electorate perspective within a year. And 2 years from now, if COVID's still going, it's over. For public schools, they have to figure this out. It's life or death for them, because parents will only put up with it for so long. Chris Fritchie and then Emily.
Yeah, the other thing to consider is, since school is turning to this format that we're talking about, I don't know why they're trying to shove in the classroom environment and experience into this online thing.
I think because they don't know what to do. I mean, Emily can let us know. They don't know how to do it, which is why we're extending all these hours to talk about this, is because they don't know which way is up. And they're desperately trying to hang on to what they know. And the classroom is it's going to undermine everything. You either go all physical or all digital, but the in between is a disaster.
Well, what I'm going to predict that people are going to find somebody online who's doing this in a creative way that engages their children and keeps their interest there. And they're going to say, how much do I need to give you per month for my child to be able to log into your channel?
Yep. No, that's coming. Emily?
Just to go back to your concern, we saw it after Katrina, when the school systems in New Orleans closed down and the charters came in and they used as a business opportunity to turn things around, and public education went really underfunded. Like, you think it's underfunded before, it was like completely non-existent, still 10 years, 15 years later. So that is a big concern of mine, as well as a public education teacher. And then the other thing, to speak to what Chris was just talking about, is the holding on to keeping a classroom. Like, I had some districts say that high school kids had to log in for 45 minutes for each period every day, and that was stupid. And then there's a principal, I think he's out in California, who created a block schedule that rotated through the week, and they only had to meet at 10 and at 1 with their teachers, and then there were office hours throughout the day to meet one-on-one with teachers, and it rotated through. And foreign language needs to meet every day, so that was a 40-minute period, but everybody else was an hour and a half. And it was like, that innovation needs to happen, but we were caught off guard. I mean, we can't as a country decide on whether or not we're going back in or not going back in, and do they have to wear masks, do they not have to wear masks, do they have to have temperatures taken? It's such a crapshoot right now as far as what it's going to look like, that no one prepared over the summer. So I scrambled all summer creating interactive slide decks for students to do voice and choice, so that they could pick what they're going to do to show what they know about X topic, and just giving them to the teachers to then edit into their own content area, because I cover K through 12, everybody. And I think it's really scary that, no one paid me for that this summer. I did that on my own because I want it to work. I don't want it to go away. And I don't think, the thing that's bothering me the most about going back this year is the ENL and the special ed kids are being completely overlooked as far as understanding how to connect with those populations from a remote standpoint. What do you do when a kid has a one-on-one person sit with them in school, and then during COVID, their parents work during the day and they're with grandma? You know what I mean? It's not equitable at all. And there's a lot of problems with all of that. So I'm just freaked out about everything. And I do think that those are the things that are going to, dump public education into the situation where these organizations buy us up, like come up with something better, and then everybody moves to it. And then the only people that are going to be in public education are the most underserved and the ones that can't afford to move out of it. And I think that that's really unfair as well. Like when we're talking about, equity among public education and what public education really is meant to do, level the playing ground. It's not going to level it. It's going to make that gap even bigger because there's no way to do it. That's why I keep asking you guys, how do I do this for free? Or how do I do this with the phone that I have in my house? Because no one's giving me money to buy anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Clark.
Thank you. One of the dramatic issues that's been unmasked by the COVID pandemic is the problem of class size. What Emily is stuck with doing is trying to go online with a system that serves 30 kids, and it's unmanageable. It's actually unmanageable when you're doing it face to face, but it's invisible. Now it became visible to parents and to the public that this model of saying, well, we're going to minimize the workforce, the number of teachers we hire by jamming them into crowded classrooms. And if you want to pay more and go to a private school or a charter school, well, we can give you smaller class sizes and we'll overpromise and underdeliver and leave town with the money. And those kids get dumped back into the public schools. So
I will argue that in the current structure,
there are tech solutions to making online education work a bit better, to have better audio and so on and so forth.
Well, I think that's the beginning.
There's not a tech solution to the class size problem. Both of those have to be simultaneously solved.
Well, I guess for me, when I'm teaching, and I haven't taught kids this yet, so I'm going to put that into. I've taught kids. I used to teach 8 to 12-year-olds in. So under 8, that's a really hard place for me to understand how tech fixes things. But over 8, I have a fair bit of experience in. And for me, the issue with the lecturing, the reason I talk to that so much is that the chaos that's created by lecturing kids is that they're bored and they have a ton of downtime while you're talking, and it creates chaos, because all of us basically during lectures, when I was a kid, did a whole bunch of other things because we weren't listening because it was boring, and so the thing is that, so a lot of for me, what I find is that we have, again, and we're adults, and so I don't know whether this is going to be different, but with more production value, with more, with better training, I don't want to interact with less than 150. For me, I don't want to have an interaction. Now, I believe that there needs to be people that are available for students that are able to come up and ask their question privately and so on and so forth. But I would rather see a breakout rooms, for instance, in Zoom or something where you're breaking out and you have teachers in all those breakout rooms. I would rather see from 40,000 physics teachers, what I would love to see is have a competition and find the 400 that are really good at this and have them be the ones and give them a bunch of tools and people and things to create great content and interact in these conversations for the students to look at. And then the other teachers are in the kind of smaller breakout rooms with, in those situations, but those teachers that really are bigger than life and able to really design those things and have a team, are able to interact with a lot more students. And the reason for that, for me, and this system that we're in is an experiment in that area, which is that this conversation gets much hard. I can tell you as the host, when this conversation goes below 150 people, it is much more difficult for me. It is a huge lift for me to go under 150 participants because they keep on coming up with great questions, because that, and the hive mind continues to generate a conversation that everyone can listen to. And when we get, like, I have taught classes with 20, and it feels like Bueller, you know, because the sample rate isn't high enough. And when the sample rate gets to a certain height, it self-maintains itself. And that is the thing that is completely the antithesis of what we are taught and what we talk about and everything else. But there is a place where it becomes, now, what I also know is that when I run these events, when they get to about 800, the whole system starts to vibrate because I can't keep up with the process. And I haven't figured that one out yet, which is why I'm trying to grow this group to 800 so I can figure it out. So, you know, I've got 300, 400, 500 pretty well figured out. The 800 I have, you know, 800 to 1500 is what I'm trying to solve. But I think that there is there is something about the hive mind where there's a lot of students that won't necessarily come up with the question, but as students are asking those questions, they're part of it. The way a lot of people here are watching this most of the time, and the people who are asking questions in the panel are generating a conversation that they're part of, that they find interesting. Stephen, and then Bill, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, you have companies like Pearson out there that have good educators, good technology, a pile of money, and a decreasing market share. They're attacking this like you would not believe.
Yeah, but I don't think they can get out of their model. Like
No,
what I saw them do with iBooks was
no,
pathetic.
they've realized they need to. They have no choice now.
Hopefully.
But also, to Emily's part, they're only addressing the cream of the crop. You know, the English as second learners, not in their ballpark.
But
Special ed, not in their ballpark.
But I think that you have to look at how do we solve 80% with very large groups so that we can put more resources into the 20% that needs help. You know, like, you know, the thing is that we need to, you know, if we can take, you know, a lot of students, and there's a whole bunch of conversations here about how we group students, because grouping students by their age is instead of their skill. Like now that we're online, we don't have to group students by their age. We could group them by their skill, you know, and when you group them by their skill set, their proven skill set, they are now able, you can have a much more efficient conversation because all the students that really understand, let's say all of them have proven that they can understand Pythagorean theorem, or they're ready for Pythagorean theorem. When they're all at that level, that conversation will move very fast because, you know, and whatever level they're at, but there could be a delta of 2 or 3 years between the students, and a geography. When we are no longer constrained by the student's age or their geographic region, we can group them in ways that are far more efficient for them to have a conversation, and use platforms like Zoom and other things to talk to all of them at the same time. But now you don't have one of them that's trying to figure out how to do this and one of them that's trying to figure out how to do that. You have all of them are in the same mind space at the same time, even if they're not in the same age space or the same geographic space. And I think that that's the thing that we have to keep on thinking about. Chris, you were going to say something?
Beware of efficiency.
Well,
it leads to racial and all ableism segregation overnight.
But what I'm saying is that at any level, having them all be the same, you know, everyone's going to go through that process. You know, they're all going to go through that level, you know, whatever that level is, they're all going to go through it regardless of their location. That the big thing is making sure that when they're in that, you know, when they're ready to have that conversation, everyone around them is ready to have that conversation.
Chris Clark, can you exploit that statement again? Blow it up.
Expand on it a little bit?
Yeah, that's the word.
The idea is that grouping people by their ability or readiness to master a particular subset of content is more efficient. And my claim is that comes at a great cost, because although it is more efficient in the sense that that group can move ahead to the next level of the zone of proximal development that they all share, kids learn from one another. And part of the function of schooling is not just to move people up to AP level calculus efficiently, it's to learn how to interact in a diverse society where people are at different levels and different degrees of interest in different topics, and we still have to relate to them in just and constructive ways. And that's a big part of what we learn in public school, is how to interact constructively and sympathetically with people different than ourselves.
And one of the things that we've done related to that in a lot of ways is to have older students working with younger students on teaching them how to do it, because it turns out it teaches the older students the subject matter way better. So, for us, it's the actual, them being in class, we try to keep them grouped. We've done areas where kept them in grouped, and because it makes the conversation faster and easier, but lean heavily on what we're doing here. For instance, I'm learning from everyone. It's like a group thing where we're learning from each other and finding places for that to intermingle. I think I completely agree with you, in the sense that we need to find ways to have folks that are more advanced always helping those that are less advanced, and because they'll understand it. It's a benefit for them as well. It's not just a benefit for the ones that are learning. I learn a lot every time I have to explain something, or I'm accountable for explaining it. Chris, and then Bill, and then we'll move on. We're going to start speeding up because I'm running out of, we're getting more questions.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, some of the things you're asking here are a threat to the OBE foundation of education. So when you start talking about grouping people by skill level and not by age, I mean, you're disrupting the last 30 years of what was trying to be accomplished, in school. But I think a lot of us understand that school is for education. It's not for social other stuff. School is for education. It's combined into a social event because kids are forced into a building together. But now this changes everything.
Well, I will admit that my interest in making education more efficient is not to get people to cover more ground from an education perspective. It's to free up time so that kids can spend more time doing what they love to do, more time finding out what they want to do, more time, becoming a human being, and working on projects with each other. Because right now what happened is that education is so inefficient that we spend all of our time. When I talk to school systems, all I'm talking about is standardized tests, right? So like that's like it feels like that's the obsession, is how do we make sure the kids test well? And so what I want to do is we can handle your tests in an hour a day. Like I'm trying to get to a point where the tests get handled really fast. And then, and I would say, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Like, okay, you want the test? We'll give you the tests. Then we free up more time for the students to explore things that are actually, in my opinion, more important. Go ahead, Bill.
Two things real quick. First of all, I just wanted to thank Emily and Chris Clark for watching out, because my son has a little bit of a learning disability. He's been on an IEP through his whole history, and that teaching to the sharpest and quickest is a difficult thing. The thing I really wanted to talk about, though, was my wife is a former instructional specialist for a big school district, and she was so upset about having been pulled into the corporate world and being out of the classroom that she wanted to teach, and she hooked up with a company in China called VIP Kid that does a ton of online one-to-one English as a second language instruction, and they have an incredibly robust. They've been doing this for like 8 years, and they have tens of thousands of kids all around the world in one-on-one instruction. They pass along curriculum. They have a simple web service where they connect a certified teacher, with one kid at one time. For those kids on IEPs and kids who are struggling, I just think that model is out there, and some people are doing it incredibly well. They have tens of thousands of Chinese kids learning English through that system, and they've got it pretty locked down.
Next question.
Yes. Aaron Graham says, is there a way to give students tests online, where they need to show their work, such as math work?
Go ahead, Emily.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so GoFormative is really good for being able for them to write on the screen. There's like a whiteboard as a testing software. It works okay. But what I advocate for my teachers that use Google and Microsoft is to use Microsoft Forms and use the file upload option. Have students put their answer in on the form, but then take a picture and upload it in the following question so they can show their work. I don't know if that answers exactly what you're looking for, but my math teachers have really started using that as a regular go-to because it shows some more integrity to their work, even if they video themselves doing the problem, which is another interesting way we've started seeing kids answer their questions.
Yeah, and I have to, as my daughter, I know I watch her I go by and she's doing math stuff, and she's doing it on her iPad, and she's somehow the school requires her to fill it all out. So she fills it all out, and you see her handwriting on the whole thing, but I don't know actually what she's using. I'll have to ask her in that process. But yeah. Next question.
Sky says, what would a virtual K through 8 teaching tutor business look like?
And I think Bill Davis might have turned me on to a model, but my wife has her master's later in life, so she is not the first choice of most administrations because they want the young and malleable. And consequently, as a substitute for the last 5 years in the local district, she's got lots of great contacts and also which schools she does not want to work in. But substitute teaching is not necessarily going to be a thing when you could be sick and still teach from home. So what would a virtual K through 8, I'm going to say teaching tutor, but I'd love to hear Bill explain or send me the link to what his wife is doing. Because even in corporate world.
Well, just really quickly, because I don't want to go into depth. My wife should be here to talk about it. But VIP Kid is a service actually started by a woman in China. And I guess she must have had a permission of the Chinese government because this thing spread gigantically. And there is tens upon tens of thousands of teachers who use this as a supplementary income thing. Some who are in the classroom and do it in the evening for extra money, some who don't. But they have an entire internet system put up. It's curriculum. It is a window with the teacher and a window with the student live and a chat function and everything else that does remote teaching pretty well.
And they've got the back office business side of all things and marketing.
They absolutely do. Plus they have a thing, they call them firemen. And so if you're having any internet trouble or anything with connection, you can go into that system and a fireman will come in and diagnose your internet issues and try to get you a better connection. It's a robust system. They've been using it for years.
That's what intimidates my wife. She says, look, I just got my master's. I figured bureaucracy out. I don't want to have to figure out how to be a business person just to do what I want to do, which is love into kids with her skills. So
Right, Emily?
Emily, help.
Well, this is actually just a warning. That VIP Kids and other ones for US educators, we see things in the background happening to students, specifically abuse, and there's no protocol for taking care of that. And seeing things happen on screen in front of you is very traumatic. So in the US, we've been very slow to kind of jump onto that format because if you're in New York and certain laws apply to you in New York and you're tutoring a kid in Nevada and it's not the same laws, there can be a lot of, red tape. That's all lots of red tape.
Well, I want to start practicing. I think Chris Fritchie and Emily and my wife, I think we can start a business here and we got a small little sample set.
There you go. Perfect. Next question. Fenwick. Fenwick, where's my next question? Where's that Fenwick?
That ringtone's gonna kill me. Tony Adamopoulos once again says, did I hear that Blackmagic has education pricing available on the ATEM Mini? If so, where?
Where is that? Where can people get the educational pricing? I think
Nick.
Nick's no longer here. We don't know where it is.
Oh,
So
yeah, we don't know.
The real question is, does Blackmagic consider homeschooling education?
Yeah, probably not. But yeah, so they usually want to work with organizations and they want certificates and things like that. But you probably could, I bet you could find it on the Blackmagic website as far as how they work on it. But we have found that homeschooling is complicated that way. Next question.
There are school systems that allow homeschooling to work within. So
yep.
This one's going to be easy. TJ Asher says, can you make Keynote run a slideshow and not take over every screen so I can monitor other items on my computer? It should not need to take over for it. Yes, you can. So it's a new.
You can now.
Update your version of Keynote. Problem solved.
It's under play, the play area. It's not the automatic play. And I wish that they would just have it so I could set up a preference. Like every time I hit play, I just want to go to a window. But the new Keynote will let you in the play. You can drop down and say play to a screen or play to a pop out a floating window, and it'll just play to a floating window, which is perfect for Zoom. I don't think that Apple completely missed the opportunity of what that means. So it means that now you can play your Keynote into Zoom and just Zoom capture that frame, and it will play it out into that system. So it's I don't know if any other ones do that, where it's complete clean aperture presentation in a window. So it's another good reason to use it if you can do it.
Did Google Slide used to be able to do that, and then they killed it or something?
Oh, it might be able to do it inside the window, but I think you have to go to get completely aperture free. Like I don't think it'll always, if I think with most of them, Keynote, PowerPoint slides. When you want to play your video out without any interface, you have to hit play and it takes over the window. What this does is and I'm sure that all of them will have it in the next 6 months because all of us got super excited about it for a variety of reasons for Keynote to do it. But Keynote just opens up a new window that is a clean aperture window. You don't have the interface. And a lot of people get around this by, I feel like it's so pathetic. When I used to do it every once in a while and I just hated it, which is I open up either PowerPoint or slides and I just click on the next slide going down at and you still see the whole interface, and people do that all the time in meetings that I'm in. And it's just so horrible. Anyway,
to John Edelson's point, if you're working within a school district that locks you into a certain box, my wife is going, but that tool used to be there in Google Classroom and now it's not. So how do those that don't have the tools and the toys? So
go ahead, Emily.
Sorry, my mouse gets stuck sometimes on the dual screen. The Google, I just put the trick in there. If you take the URL back up to the edit and type the word present, you'll get the presentation inside of your presentation window. So like when I'm doing a Zoom, I can open it up in its own separate window and still have access to tabs. So if I'm demonstrating a tool and stuff.
Cool.
And it also has an option where you can type, I think it's preview preview, and that'll do the same thing. So you back up the tail to where it says /edit and then type in /present or /preview, and it'll make it nice and pretty.
Emily, you saved my marriage.
that's Emily wins for the ninja tip for the day. That is amazing. That's amazing. Thank you. All right, next question.
Next question, Timothy McKean again says, Alex, have you asked yourself if that size, this is referring back to your preferred class size, for a more engaging experience to you as the teacher or more engaging to the students? With 500 people and only 10 to 20 asking questions and voting, that's a poor engagement rate.
What we don't find is that when you start creating the environment of people, you're going to answer a lot of those questions. What we don't find is it's 10 people. It's different people that are asking those questions. We're still using the inefficient version of our question system that I haven't shown you the other version yet. So when you have TAs and you have, so the up to 500 is really good. Again, I can cover a lot of ground. Our average view time is an order of magnitude. The average view time for this show is an order of magnitude, possibly 2 orders of magnitude larger view time than YouTube or Facebook. Well, it's 100 times more than Facebook, and it's like 10 to 15 times more than YouTube. So I'll argue that it's engaging somebody, because if I was doing a YouTube event that had an average view time of 90 minutes or over 90 minutes every single day, they would write case studies about it. So the thing is that, so I'm going to argue that there's some kind of engagement because people keep on coming back and people keep on staying for a long time. But what we have done in the past for larger groups is we have a series of people answering questions in the back end. You have 6 or 8 people, one person doing traffic control, and they push all the questions to different people that can answer them. At that point, we're no longer answering 12 questions an hour or 20 questions an hour. We're answering 200 questions an hour. And when you do that and you index it, it means that you can have 1,000 students asking 200 questions an hour, and they're all coming back with an answer. The simpler answers are getting text questions. The ones that you want to talk about are getting video questions, and it scales really fast, and it's a much more engaging. And what happens is that it actually, because all those questions are getting answered, it creates more energy into the system. And so there is a reason why we're moving out of Zoom and into our Q&A system, because we can do a lot of things that would be hard to do inside the system. Right now, you're just seeing the most basic version. Next question.
The next question would be, move this up here. Can you recommend a low-cost rig for kids for online private music lessons? They require 1 mic for talking and a second mic for playing an instrument. Cost is an issue.
What was the one where your kids were doing the piano lessons? I mean, is that even?
She stopped it. She quit. It was musician. She said it didn't have the songs that she wanted, so she went back to YouTube. So she's learning how to play the piano from YouTube, because she said and this is the problem. She said, I want to learn songs that aren't in the musician thing, the musician, and I can't learn those. And so she's rather sit there and hit play and repeat in YouTube than use the app. Chris?
So I don't know if this is a solution, but when my daughter was doing the last part of the school year, they had a FaceTime group going with a couple other kids that were in the class or in the Zoom or whatever thing that they were using. So they would all mute their mics and then talk amongst themselves while the class was going on. She just had her phone sitting right up above her laptop. So they had their own little group going. So I wonder if your phone could be one mic and just another cheap mic be the instrument mic.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Go ahead, John, real quick, and then we're going to keep moving.
If you look on Roll and they have a Go Live cast, and it's designed for a musician. It has the input for an instrument, for a microphone. It's not inexpensive. It's $250, but it's pretty amazing.
Probably like the little Behringer mixers with 2 inputs might be also another solution with a microphone and an input. It's like $50 or $70 and might be a good one to use as a basic connection. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, in terms of mic choices, maybe an SM58 and the Audio Technica 2020, so that you have a choice of dynamic and condenser depending on what instrument you're playing.
Yep. Next question.
The next question, Greg Yote says, how can a room camera and room microphone be used to teach physical room and online at the same time? Ooh. We have a problem in our schools where the expectation is the teacher is teaching the physical class and online at the same time. And this with everything from 1st grade through 12.
Go, Jason, real quick, 15 seconds, because we're gonna try to get through all these questions.
My 15-second answer is that will be a dumpster fire no matter how you do it.
It's never gonna work. Bill?
Yeah, just the physics of sound. If you're trying to mic a classroom of people, it's never going to work. The mics are too far from the kids.
It'll work for the kids that are in the classroom. It just won't work for the kids online. You'll be wondering why they're not paying attention. Emily, real quick.
Just real quick, they make something called a swivel that the teacher wears the mic, it hangs from their neck, and the camera follows them from the center point of the room. I've seen them at trade shows and stuff, but I don't use one. We have one in our webinar room, but I don't use it, so I don't know how great that would be.
I've had people spend real money on hybrid events. They just don't work. Like, they don't work for the online audience. So like I've done over 1,000 of them. Like, when I say this, it's not like I have an opinion about it that I haven't seen it. And I've had people pay me $5,000 a day, $10,000 a day, $100,000 a day to do these. And for the online audience, the one person, you lose half the attention of the person speaking for every person in there. So it's 50% of their attention, then 25, then 12 and a half, then 6.25. You got 10 kids in there, and the online audience now has 1% of their attention, and they feel disengaged, they feel passive, and they stop listening. And that is all over. It's always the same. Go ahead, Emily.
I was just going to say, and the biggest problem with this hybrid expectation that some kids can choose to go into the physical classroom and some kids can stay home is that one teacher has to be responsible for all of it. And it's going to be a dumpster fire, a big one.
Dumpster fire. And there's nothing, if you can't get everybody into the room, it should all be online. Like, you should just stop going down this path, stop messing with this, because you're also not getting the tools that you need. When someone hires me to do a hybrid, I'm bringing in $50,000 worth of hardware, and it still doesn't work. You're not going to be able to do it with $100 worth of hardware that the school gives you. Go ahead, Chris Clark.
It's a more expensive dumpster fire when you come. Arizona State University is trying to do exactly this. They've equipped 900 classrooms to have both face-to-face and remote teaching simultaneously with the same instructor. Watch for it in the headline.
Yeah, and the students might be able to muscle through it, but it's not really working. If it's working, it's just because the students are putting effort into it, and and I predict that most of the students that are online will want to go to another university or quit, relatively quickly, because it's just going to be a nasty experience, for them.
Perfect plans in which everything has to break right for 70,000 students.
It's so not going to work. Anyway, next question. We're going to keep moving really quickly. Sorry, guys.
Stuart Fairweather says, how much time is spent on training teachers to be good presenters? As the COVID issues are worldwide, are there easily accessible resources to train teachers to be better presenters?
And I'll argue really quickly, and raise your hand if you have a 15-second answer, but I'll argue really quickly. What we need to do is teach teachers how to build great little videos with Keynote and other things like that, and then let them answer questions. Most of the teachers know the subject matter. They're passionate about the subject matter. They can talk to the subject matter, but having them drone on about the subject matter it would be easier to teach them how to make good videos and how to cut that down and give the students something that they actually want to watch, rather than trying to teach them how to be effective for 45 minutes. Sky?
I will join that laboratory. I have a teacher. I will force
Okay. All right, great. Our next question.
I know this is near and dear to your heart, Chuck Braverman. Hey, Chuck, I'm looking for a solution to roll in video with better quality, frames per second, than Zoom for my college film class. 20 to 25 students online at the same time.
Don't use Zoom. Like you can use Zoom for the classroom. You may want to think about ways of, they don't have that really worked out. If you're doing, you have two different options. You have low resolution and this is going to get fixed. No, wait. What Guy was talking, either a Zoom room or a business connection will give you 720p in the video section, which will improve the quality if they're coming in over Meet. Or if they're all in the panel and they're not in the webinar. The webinar is still limited to 640 by 360. But if you hack it with a business account or with a Zoom room, you'll end up getting 720p really close to 20 or 30 frames a second. Your 2398 is never really going to work. If you're doing film, over an online platform, but if you want frame accurate, you're going to have to, build your own CDN. But if you want something relatively easy and inexpensive, either a Zoom room or a business account in Zoom will get you 720p, I believe, in that. Go ahead, Seth, and then Jason.
I was just going to say thank you so much. I've got to run.
Thanks, Seth. Good to see you.
Again, thank you everybody for the delightful conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex, for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Jason.
Aside from Zoom trickery, I would say if you've got a university group of students, they're going to be passionate about film, and you can always just upload it to Vimeo and you'd get perfect playback. They'd probably actually do it.
Rights issues become complicated. Chris Ritchie, go ahead.
Yeah, just to answer, you guys were asking about that hybrid thing. Our school just decided to do that, so I'll keep you guys posted.
Yeah, it's gonna be a disaster. All right, next question.
Yeah, and for argument's sake, we're doing 1280, 720, and 30p right now.
Thanks, Guy.
Thanks, Guy. TJ Asher says
720. It's 720p brought to you by Guy Cochran. All right,
DBE store, Seattle, Washington.
All right, thanks.
As we discussed the Blackmagic design announcement today, can we be specific as to how these items can help existing productions and educators, if they can help at all?
Until we see it, we don't know. It could, if they work, it'll revolutionize education. Like it will, because the hardware that ASU is putting into their thing that they spent all that time on could have been all done virtually, and the whole thing, corporate education, general education. It's relatively cost effective to put these together. It doesn't. Again, if we start increasing class sizes, at least for some of the classes, maybe not all the classes the students go to, maybe once a week they go to one with a really big, covering a bunch of stuff. You're talking about a couple $1,000s to be able to integrate a lot of teachers with multi-camera and all kinds of other stuff. I've never seen anything like it if it works. I'm hesitant to say it'll work. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I just think that we have to understand that this is not necessarily equipment that we're going to toss into the teacher and make the teacher do stuff with. I think the school can run these tools and help teachers present better and maybe take some of the load off them for having to switch and teach at the same time.
And one of the reasons that I'm doing this today, and we're going to be doing it tomorrow for as much time as we can, is because I do think that what could come out of this is another generation of teacher that is a completely different thing than what we've seen before. Teachers that understand how to produce media, teachers that understand how to use all these tools to their maximum level, that understand how to use their computers and so on and so forth. And I think that they're going to be under high demand if this keeps on going, because school systems are going to look for those teachers. And I think that what we want to do is empower those teachers. If they're interested in that direction, how do we give them the tools to do that? Go ahead, John.
I just want to put a plug in saying that teachers doing presentations is a small fraction of the work that teachers do in classrooms. When I was teaching my lectures, which weren't lectures, they were discussions, but a lot of it was deciding the curriculum, meeting with students, analyzing their work. So I think we need to improve their presentation skills, but we also need to improve their skills at being able to do the student interaction at a distance, and that becomes a challenge also.
Dealing with foreign language, dealing with bureaucracy, dealing with the parents, dealing with the fellow teachers.
Yep. Stephen, real quick.
Teachers, get your demo reels done.
It's coming. I mean, it's going to get, it really depends on how long this lasts, but if it lasts for another year or year and a half, it's going to get really competitive for the teachers that are technically capable. Emily?
Yeah, when we shut down on March 13th, I do training, tech integration training, and I was doing Zoom meetings for over 100 teachers, 5 or 6 times a day at an hour a clip, just explaining how to set up their home rig, focusing on audio and clarity and things like that. And then moving on to after that, it was like something like 1,500 teachers and over 7,500 hours on Zoom, just teaching people the basics of how to move to online instruction. And that was with me and my general knowledge, not like I wasn't trained in media production.
Well,
I have a theatrical background, like minor in theater, but not this.
Well, and what I'm hoping to do with these hours that we're doing is we are a bunch of geeks. You are giving us the education technical, like this is what it's really like, and this is what we really need. Chris Clark is checking us when we go too far, like and saying you got to think about these other things that you may be overseeing when in your little techie world. And so, which is incredibly valuable, is that limiter of think about the bigger picture here. But the goal is to move people. Move this forward as fast as we can so that it actually can be useful for at least the teachers that are ready to play hard, and the hard part is they're not getting any good examples. Sorry, John, but I watched pieces of that school thing with Zoom and it was a dumpster fire. I was just like horrified that Zoom spent I don't know what effort Zoom put into it, but there were slides that you couldn't read. And I was like, okay, all we talk about here is how important it is to be able to do presentations that are readable and that are understandable. And I opened it up, and every time I opened it up, it was some crazy slide deck that was like broke every rule of slide decks in it. And then we had all these virtual backgrounds that looked horrible. And, I was just like, that was not a great execution of something that was there. So we're hoping to, within what we're doing, to hopefully move that conversation a little bit more forward. And John, you can tell anyone that needs to know that.
No, they realize the shortcomings, and
we would love to help them. All right. Anyway,
the problem is even how to figure out how to help them, and I think we're helping here.
Yeah, Jason.
Just real quick, Emily, if you are training that many people, sell tickets, please, and buy some equipment, because that is impressive.
So anyway, yeah. So
Public education doesn't let you sell.
Yeah.
They hired you.
Man.
Yeah.
I know. Trust me. I've been trying to figure out how to become an edu celebrity, even though I despise that. Just so I can monetize
keep
it.
Coming.
So.
Keep coming.
Okay,
we'll work together on that. All right. Next question.
Kyle Hammond says, if we stop leveling up by age, at what point does education become higher education, and where does education stop? Never. And students then join the workforce or whatever the next step is. I hope this makes sense.
I wrote a thing that's on Medium somewhere about the need for blue collar, digital blue collar workers. And the need for us to start thinking about, and what I meant by that is that a lot of stuff we do doesn't require a college education. I don't have a college education. I have parts of one. You can learn it a lot, and learn all of those things. Media skills and development skills and all these things are incredibly important as we move forward. And I believe that students should be learning how to do the media part when they're 10. It's about the right time for them to start learning how to do that, and then just have it be a steady gradation. And if they decide to go to higher education or into professional education or whatever to do that, they can. And I think there's a lot of skill sets in our businesses that, including coding and other things, that could be a steady transition. It's not, we go to grade school and then high school and then college, but they're just constantly learning, and it's never going to stop. As Chris said, I think that people need to, for me and for us, that learning is happening here for 3 hours a day, but people need to be thinking about an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of us learning every day so that it affects, how we're doing what we're doing. Jason and then Sky really quickly. We're going to have to cut off soon. So I'm trying to get to the end of the questions.
No, I'll concede my time. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sky, real quick.
Chris Fritchie and I would like to connect with Emily. How can we do that? Are you in Discord? And we're serious. We
Emily's
really are.
in Discord. Yeah, we see her there.
Okay, Emily,
Right,
you've got following and fans.
All right.
Yeah, I
next
just
question.
put in my Twitter and my email into the chat too, because I don't mind.
Excellent. All right.
You will chat.
All right. Next
Tomorrow,
question.
can you move my little
Okay.
my little window next to Emily?
Everyone wants to sit next to Emily now. Yeah. That's great.
Emily's the coolest kid.
Yeah. Guys, go ahead.
celeb.
She saved my marriage.
Yeah. As I was watching some of the Zoom Academy videos, they were talking about bandwidth issues. And one of the things that they brought up is just good old USPS and sending out some of these documents and sending out some of these kits to build and things like that, and then reporting either through email or some of these things. So we can't forget about those guys that just aren't going to have this high speed that we just take for granted every day. So there are other methods. And then the other thing that I was thinking about is the way that a lot of the reps come into our company is they bring one guy that's like the engineer, like geeky guy that barely talks. And then you got the other guy that's like the bubbly personality. And I'm wondering if in these larger rooms, if you have one person that is like the brain that can just answer everything, and then the other guy that or gal that can be the bubbly, like heart to heart. Because I'm seeing in yesterday's Zoom Academy just reminded me of this, is just the heart, the passion, all that, what makes a kid want to learn, like what is it that pulls them in. And so we can't forget about the basics. Those are some of the things that were just on my mind through this discussion.
Yeah. I do think that we need to find this. There's some of the teachers that are really bigger than life in the class are not going to be technologically ready to do this. And again, how we team that up in the same budget, I still feel is going to be figuring out ways, regardless of that it's working or not working right now, figuring out ways to increase the size of that classroom, and so that the ones that are really interesting and really able to put it out there in front of lots of people, hold court in front of hundreds or thousands of students, are empowered and not caught up in the technology. While I have a lot of other folks that are handling one-on-one that might be more personal. There might be some teachers that are really good at that one-on-one conversation, but not really good at the presentation. So have them working on that, and having the teachers that can do a big presentation or a big conversation with hundreds or thousands do that part, and specialize a little bit more than having them all do kind of the same thing. Colin, real quick.
Yeah, there's a fundamental flaw with your class size theory that larger is better from 500 to 800. In an adult presentation, someone goes to a conference and they have the option to engage with you. They have the option to listen and gather information from you, because either it's valuable or it's not. In an academic environment, the teacher has to engage with everyone. The more people you cram into that classroom, the harder that is for the teacher.
Well, it's not by itself, it's not enough. I will absolutely agree with you. I think that what's necessary past that are a lot of games and interaction and so on and so forth that constantly work with the students. I don't know if they need to be personally interacted with. I don't think that I was pretty good at avoiding most personal interaction with the teachers for most of my
how did that
grade
serve
school.
you?
It served me really well. I'm like, it was
How did
really
that
good.
serve you academically?
I had straight A's. I mean, I was generally near the top of my class most of the time. Bill?
Until you gave up.
Until I got, I got my work got so busy that it wasn't worth going to school anymore. I was like, why am I going to broadcast? I'm the music director and program director for a radio station. Why am I going to school for this? The teacher that I was talking to would no longer could keep up with what I was doing because they hadn't done it for 20 years. Bill.
So for me, the thing is, this is levels. And I think both viewpoints are very important. The whole idea of this is to try to distill best practices. What works for a large group gathering? What works when you can stratify the learners into a similarity? And what works when you can only deal one-on-one with an individual student's strengths and weaknesses properly for that student? So we're trying to figure it all out, and it's not one answer.
It's just why we're going to keep on spending a lot of time talking about it. Jason?
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, you didn't say that it was better or worse. To Colin's point, you just said you didn't know how to do it yet.
Right. Well, and I'm still trying to figure it out. I mean, that's what we're doing here. That's what I'm figuring out. All right, next question.
Okay, Jeff, Scott Joff says, when it comes to watching recorded lectures, some professors I talk to can't accept that their students are bored. They believe the students are lazy. How can I help them move past that mindset?
Teachers who take the accountability to be interesting will run you over. Like as this picks up, here's the thing: what happens with class size? If class size increases, there will be the new school systems will start looking for teachers that are going to allow them to leverage that, and they're going to pay those teachers a lot more money, and they're going to let other teachers go because they're not, and so you can either be personally accountable for it, or you can, and maybe not. Like, everyone's been able to live in that world for a long time, but I think that there's a point where, when I get up in front of a classroom, if people are bored, I take it as my responsibility. Like, I don't take it as, it's a measurement of my capability of holding their attention. It is not their responsibility. It's just backwards thinking. And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, it's just, I don't even know why I'm afraid if someone had that conversation with me, I would be like, I don't even know why you're in this business. So it's, like, I wouldn't have any time for someone like that, because it's just, to me, everything that you learn as a speaker, not as a teacher, but everything you learn as a speaker, is that your accountability is to keep everybody's attention. It's not their accountability to stay. You look at Tony Robbins. Do you think he's expecting everyone to pay attention to him? He's spending a lot of money and time and effort to make sure that everyone is engaged the whole time. And he keeps on coming up with apparatuses and processes and everything else to keep everybody engaged, because he takes it as 110% his responsibility that everyone's engaged and they feel value. Whether they do or not is another thing, but I guarantee that's how he approaches it. Go ahead, John.
Well, I just want to say, I don't think that's the norm. So we've all had a boring professor, and I think it stands out more because it's just so painful. Yeah. But I really want to give Emily credit and the teachers who attended your sessions. And I could say in the California State University system, when it's determined they were going to go virtually for all classes this fall, the amount of time faculty have been spending over the summer trying to solve these problems quickly without a lot of resources and tools. So, I mean, I think teachers became teachers or professors because they wanted to engage with students. They wanted to be heard. I don't think I've known any faculty member decided, I want to grow up and be as boring as I can be.
No, I think it happens. I think they get beaten into that position, like by a system, by bureaucracy and by the process. I think that it's not. I don't think they start that way. I think that they get that way. And I know that if I had been in education, I probably would have gotten that way too. It was the handful of classes that I've done inside of the college systems and so on and so forth. Like, just the process around doing it was soul sucking. So I get it. Yeah.
The interaction with students
I enjoyed. That part was great. It was all the other stuff that was not great.
But that's anyway, what keeps me in it.
As an outside witness to that statement of what Alex just stated, yes, the passion will be killed by the bureaucracy.
Yeah. Next question. We're going to do these really fast because I got to go.
Yeah. Our local school, Cheyenne, Wyoming, are going to virtual classrooms or in person. An outside company is managing the online, and students can switch quarterly. It seems better than hybrid rooms. Are others seeing this trend?
Yeah, it's in our school system. They're getting a choice, although I think they took the choice away because they're now going all online. I think no one's going in. And I think that's a way better choice than if you're going to try to figure this out. I'd much rather see school systems say, people can choose to go in or out. The hard part is really for the teachers who are now forced to be in that system. I know that for me, I'm not sure if I would let my kids do it because of the projects that I'm on. I can't afford to get COVID, so I'm super paranoid about it. Like, I just can't afford to have them go into the classroom, because over the next 3 months, me getting sick and my team getting sick would cost my company $100,000 a week. So it's not, it's like I can't, so my decision related to that is probably not what is best for them. It's that I can't afford for them to be in a petri dish. Colin?
North Carolina is doing much the same. They're allowing each county to decide whether they want to do any in-person classes at all, and they're defining that decision based on the input of the constituency in that county. Parents electing to either send their kids to an online school or in person.
But I would say that I think that's better.
Most counties are doing the online at this point.
But I will say that I think that's a better choice than hybrid. I mean, I think
Absolutely, and that was my
no, no.
point. Yes, I think they will have a better solution. It's my understanding that it will be separated in that way.
Yep. Bill, real quick.
Yeah, just this is compounded by the fact that we have been starving public education for such a long time. I actually had a circumstance where I visited a friend of mine who was working in an inner city school, and literally the teacher in the room next had spent the last 5 years before becoming a teacher in that class as a prison guard. So that was her educational choice, or her making a living choice: prison guard or teacher.
Right,
That's a little scary.
Next question.
Last question. Bruce Francis says, is there anything we could learn from the educational uses of Zoom and from office hours that would improve the upcoming presidential debates?
I have no idea. I have no idea how they're going to go.
By improve,
I don't even know.
Muting everybody's mic until they're allowed to speak.
Yeah, I don't. Well, there's only going to be 2 people. It'll be pretty easy. I mean, I don't think they're going to change the model.
It's never worked in 40 years of watching these things.
Yeah,
in my case,
it'll be fine. All right, thank you, everyone. I know we ran a little long. Thanks for many of your attention. I really appreciate it. This is obviously the thing I'm most opinionated about, but I'm also most passionate about. I really want to thank all the educators that have been joining us and being part of this conversation. We bring more, please. Tell your friends. We want to make sure that educators are part of that conversation, and come on the panel, ask more questions. Again, remember, so 2 hours tomorrow is going to be general conversations, so 7 to 9, then 9 on. We're going to take on education questions. And, it just depends on how many there are. It could be 45 minutes or 4 hours. It'll be up to the folks asking the questions. So anyway, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you again to everyone, and have a great day. Hit it, Mickey.
The bathroom before you sign on.
Yeah, exactly. Education tomorrow. Sunday is we'll look at everything and think about what's up and what's down, and then Monday we'll start it all over again. All right, see you guys. Thank you so much.